Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now, it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead.
I spoke to you about the situation in the Gulf and explained that the United Kingdom was not involved in the strikes on Iran. That remains the case. The basis of our decision is the collective self-defense of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. That is in accordance with international law, and we are publishing a summary of our legal advice. We are not joining these strikes, but we will continue with our defensive actions in the region.
Mr Farage, would a reform government have allowed US forces to use UK air bases for offensive operations in Iran?
Yes is the answer to your question. I would have said to the Americans, please do use our bases. We will be supportive of you on this.
There were a series of very loud blasts in the area of Dubai that I'm based in. That's in the Marina area. It's a very touristy area, actually. Those blasts were the loudest we've heard yet, but equally we are reassured that they are most likely the sound of interception by the UAE's quite sophisticated THAAD interception kit. That is the Terminal High Altitude Area Defence System.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very, very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Very, very much appreciate you joining me. Sorry I've been off for the last week, busy falling down a mountain, various injuries, not actually, alarmingly, from falling down a mountain, walking into a door, perhaps, but there we are. Thank you very much to the lovely makeup lady sorting out my black eye, but hopefully it won't start showing through the makeup as we get through the next 3 hours, because as you will know, as I just mentioned to JK, I do have a little bit of a habit of managing to book holidays when small matter of, you know, World War III starting, that sort of thing. So it's great to be back on air to be able to talk about it, because so much to say, so much to talk about. Developments pretty much, you know, minute by minute, hour by hour at the moment, and there's so much we want to talk about. So whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you so much for your company. Don't forget, if you miss anything from the show, you can go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we'll discuss the latest on the US and Israel's war on Iran. Donald Trump's claim that surging oil prices are a small price to pay. Remember what happened when Russia invaded Ukraine and what that did to our energy bills and our economy? Is that a small price to pay? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Keir Starmer scrambling to save the special relationship last night in a phone call with Donald Trump. He's been making some comments on a visit today, talking about the possible energy crisis and the war, and we'll talk about that. Oh yes, and Iran has a new supreme leader, and it is Mojtaba Khamenei. Yes, a remarkably similar name to the last one. Oh yeah, it's his son. Of course it is. We'll be talking about all of that. Lots of top experts. You don't want to miss the next few hours. Delighted to say joining me for the show throughout as well as the top experts. Conservative commentator Benedict Spence. Big cruel. You know your stuff on the Middle East, that's for sure. Good morning to you.
I have to just say, I think it's too much of a coincidence that you disappear for a week. A couple of days later, the Ayatollah ends up dead dead. And now you're back here with a series of unexplained mystery skiing injuries.
Would I not be a great sort of, undercover agent? No, but would I not be? I mean, I get that on Twitter all the time. Everyone says I'm,
so you might as well be.
Those 7,000 shekels, they go a long way.
They really do.
But I mean, genuinely, the thing is, no one would suspect me. They think, she gabs all the time. She wouldn't be able to keep a secret.
It would be too obvious. Yeah, too obvious that the person who shouts about getting rid of the Iranian regime is actually the person doing it. Who would have thought?
Who knew? I mean, I did start a poll yesterday on how long the new Ayatollah will last. 1 day, 1 week, 1 hour. So we'll see, because apparently Donald Trump's not happy with this choice. This guy's not been seen in public. I love the fact they did choose someone. They weren't going to name them so they couldn't be attacked. I mean, you've got to see the funny side of state assassination at this point, do you not?
It is.
Look, I mean, let's not want to talk about a question I'm going to put out to you today. And as you know, you don't use your rules. You get to decide what you want to call in about. I have a funny feeling some of you are going to get quite angry with me today because of my views on all of this. And I think you can probably guess them from previous conflagrations, shall we say. But Donald Trump particularly saying that surging world oil prices are a small price to pay for defeating the threat from Iran. We've got basically 20% of oil and gas in the world goes through the Strait of Hormuz, which is currently closed. It's a 24-mile little strait in the Middle East. All of the oil and gas that's produced in the Middle East there basically comes straight out of there. That's closed by all these missiles going back and forth. That is going to boost the price of oil and gas, and it's going to affect us more because we don't have any storage and because we've got idiots like Ed Miliband in charge and the last Tory lot who messed it up as well, their net zero madness. So we're going to be hit hard. We know what happened with the Ukraine war and the impact that had on our energy prices and our economy as a whole. If energy prices go up, everything goes up. It's not just your heating bill. Every single thing is used at some point with transport, whatever, using those fossil fuels. So prices are going to go up. Your mortgage is probably going to go up. Not just personal borrowing, business borrowing, but also crucially government borrowing is going to go up. And then they might have an energy price fix. It's just to look after us like they did in 2022. Who's going to pay for that? The taxpayer through borrowing. So our taxes are going to go up. It's really that simple. This is going to cost us all a lot of money unless it all just kind of goes away in the next week or so. So I want to know what your reaction is to Donald Trump saying it's a small price to pay. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost £1, standard network rate message. But is there anything else you want to talk about? Give us a call about that as well. Benedict Spence, is it a small price to pay?
Well, no, demonstrably it's going to be a huge price to pay for an awful lot of people, especially in Europe, it must be said, because as you've just alluded to, Europe has gone down a truly insane path when it comes to energy production, but also food production as well, it must be said. Those are the two big things that are going to be hit first, and then everything sort of follows after the course. I was reading an interesting thing, actually, the other day, which said that Germany's current energy prices would currently be about a third lower if it hadn't shut down all of its nuclear power stations. The only country in Europe that's probably going to be all right energy-wise is France, because of the amount of nuclear that they rolled out.
My view is like, countries, you keep voting for these. They keep voting in the Greens to have a role in government. You keep voting for these idiots. You live to pay the cost.
Oh yeah, we do have to accept, ultimately, if you live in a democracy, everybody else, and I know that there'll be lots of listeners going, well, I didn't vote for it. Okay, fine. No. But the country more broadly bears some responsibility.
We didn't get a choice in 2019 or on this issue. We'll definitely have a choice in the next election. If you still want to go along with this net zero madness, then fair. You deal with the energy price hikes, guys.
What I would also say is this is another thing for civil service reform down the road, because of course they put massive blocks on anybody trying to do these things. But anyway, that's slightly beside the point. All of this that's going on, it's genuinely an incredibly difficult thing to try to, if you'll pardon the pun, war game, because there are so many different permutations for this. Is it a small price to pay? Well, look, the Iranian regime is in a position where it is able to actually cause the amount of damage that it is without nuclear weapons. What is the Iranian regime set on? The eradication of Israel and the spreading of its ideology across the region. This isn't a regime that is just going to sit there and go, we don't actually want to spread or do anything worse than this. Actually, this is what they're about. They are actively seeking nuclear weapons for that purpose. So
they're not seeking nuclear weapons to defend themselves. That's what people need to get to grips with. They're seeking nuclear weapons to be able to use them against Israel, against other countries, against the West. I mean,
this is one of those countries. This is one of those countries.
People are nutters.
This is one of those countries that does not need a civilian nuclear program.
And
it's one of the few countries actually where solar power would be a magnificent thing. It would be great.
But didn't go for that. Funny
enough. But they didn't. No, they wanted the one that you can build bombs as a side product.
Funny enough.
So as a sort of a moral perspective, as well as the danger it poses to the rest of the region, there is also the real humanitarian cost to the people that live there, where, let's be clear, people are executed for wanting to go outside with their hair uncovered, or wanting to, hold hands with people that they're not married to or of the same sex with. Now, I don't think that this attack was caused in an attempt to free the people of Iran. I'm much too cynical about that. This is about Israel's defense, not about the liberation. The liberation could be a byproduct, but actually, I think ultimately the Israelis and the Americans would also be happy with the balkanization of the region into smaller states, which is not necessarily going to liberate people. However, we in the UK, are we actually in a position to contribute to this? No. That's the long and short of it. And I hear what Donald Trump is saying, what the Israelis are saying, what the Emiratis are saying.
No point joining in after we've already won.
Yeah,
I mean, not exactly Winston Churchill.
The reality is there is nothing that we can gain or even really contribute to this beyond what we're currently doing. The embarrassment is that we weren't able to defend our own assets and that we dragged our heels on allowing our allies to use assets that we had already agreed that they had the right to use.
There's no point having a Diego Garcia US base if the US can't use it.
Exactly. Yes. Or if we can't defend Akrotiri ourselves, what's the point in us having it? And let's be very clear here, EU countries are going to start pushing on this. This is going to be the next EU wedge issue where they try to punish the UK. They, Germany, France, all of them, they'll start saying, look, the Brits can't defend Akrotiri, they can't defend Cyprus, so it'll have to pass to an EU country. That's the next thing that's going to happen.
We'll probably give it to the EU and then we'll pay them for the benefit of it.
In return for some fantastic scheme.
Is this not a massive wake-up call? Look, again, I'm with Tony Blair on this stuff, and again, people go, oh, the Iraq war. Well, I give you Syria. I raise you Syria. Yeah. I mean, for goodness sake. But again, we've got to remember, Iran and Iraq are not the same country. They begin with the first three letters. That's it. They're completely different countries. Iran has a much more, it's 70% secular for a start. Yeah. It's not full of people living in sodding mud huts who are completely radicalised. No. Actually, that is not the vast majority of the people in Iran. So I think there is hope for there to be, and they've got a strong culture dating back many thousands of years, long before Islam.
They have a highly educated middle class, which is why so many of them live in the West, because they're able to get jobs in the West and
able
to
leave. Escape. Yeah, exactly. So it's a very, very different matter. Do I trust that Donald Trump is the president who's thought it all through, Endgame, all the things, all the stuff that wasn't done under George W. Bush with Iraq? No, I don't. However, they've made it really clear. We're going to get rid of Ayatollah. You can have it. It's like the Maduro thing. You can have any regime you want, unless it's a regime that is a threat to Israel, which is a Western ally. Sorry, but it is, and is a threat to America and to the West. And that's the end of the matter. It is as simple as that. When people, this is my thing. Is it a small price to pay? No, it's not. It's going to be, as you said, it's going to be a huge price to pay. Same as Ukraine. Now, again, should we have said, Russia, that's fine, you can have Ukraine, not a problem. We wouldn't have had that spike because we wouldn't have supplied weapons. Ukraine would have been defeated. Well, actually, it probably wouldn't have been defeated as quickly as most so-called experts thought because they were willing to fight back because they've got a little bit more pride in their country than most Brits do. But realistically, they would have been defeated without EU, British and American aid in the last few years. But yes, there was a price to pay. We are still paying that price of higher energy costs. We are still facing that price in across the board in terms of the cost of supporting that war. Is that a small price to pay? Yes, it is, because it's protecting Europe. They are fighting a war to protect us from Russia and Russian expansionism. I would say the same about Iran. Iran is a direct threat to the entire world, because if you seriously think that Iran isn't trying to get nuclear weapons, I mean, I'm sorry, you've just not been paying attention. If you seriously think when Iran, under the old Ayatollah, the one before him, or the new boy now, 56-year-old, but nevertheless, but if you seriously think they would not be willing to use those weapons, you've not read anything about this, the background of this country. These people are complete and utter Islamist radical lunatics. They believe that they have to end the world for the returon of a particular this prophet, this kid that went missing apparently 1,000 years ago or something. They are. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm going to say this as an atheist. They're insane. They are a danger to their own people, as we saw. And anyone saying, "Oh, isn't it awful? Oh, some children got killed in a primary school, a girls' school that happened to be next to an IRGC base." If that was American forces or Israeli forces, that is terrible and very sad. But by the way, The Iranians have slaughtered 30 to 40 thousand minimum of their own young people in January and in February. So I'm sod off with your crocodile tears.
Yeah.
The reality is, this price to pay for this action now is going to be a hell of a lot less than the disruption we would have if, there was a nuclear war in the Middle East.
Yeah, I mean, that is the important thing about the girls' school, which, two things, interestingly. It was very interesting that immediately the usual people said it was the Israelis that did it. You know, the classic blood libel about Jews killing children. But that's the key thing. The Iranians would happily have shot every one of those girls themselves if they broke some perceived religious
If they took
law. It's a military theocracy and it's dangerous.
So frankly, they can do one. I mean, apparently we've got just 2 days worth of gas stored up, but apparently that's what we always have because we've just got mad, insane policies. Again, let's have another wake-up call about this. The Prime Minister, let me just read you some of the things that he's had to say this morning. I want to reassure... It works better with the voice, doesn't it? Keir Starmer says he wants to reassure people who are feeling anxious about the growing war in Iran. You might want to, Keir Starmer. I doubt you're the man to do it. This is not a man with a bedside manner. He's been to a community centre in London, of course he has. He says, I just wanted to acknowledge that a lot of you and a lot of people across the country will be very anxious about the situation that's unfolding with the conflict in Iran going now into its 9th day. I think it's 10th, isn't it? I know that people are watching that. They're concerned about that. I wanted to reassure you about some of the measures that we're taking as a government. I mean, what? I mean... What? We've what? Well, we've still got the issue. We've got 300,000 Britons in the Middle East. Talking about getting people back, they've got 35,000 back so far. This says the government's working around the clock on that issue. And he said it's really important that decisions about the UK military are made by the UK Prime Minister. They gets to decide when our military is used. Fundamental principle, apparently. Except it would appear that actually Ed Miliband last week helped decide this. Not last time I looked, I don't think he was elected Prime Minister. No,
in fact, he was soundly rejected.
Yeah.
That's the only time he's ever been in front of the public, and they went, absolutely not. Listen, Keir Starmer actually has in his lap an opportunity for, you know how every 6 months he does a reset and then it all goes horribly wrong the next day?
He does one every month.
He has the opportunity for an actual reset here. He has the opportunity to announce that actually they are going to be rolling back on things like net zero. They don't even have to go the whole way, but say in the grand scheme of things, two things here. Armed forces and energy independence, and say, listen, I know that this is going to upset lots of people, but this is an emergency and I'm acting in the national interest. And people would respect him across the board if he did the brave thing right now and said there will be an actual review, an uptick in spending on the MOD and on things that need to be built. You know, not useless Ajax troop supports that don't work, but actual things that need to be. That will create jobs in the UK, especially if you're reshoring a lot of it, and energy independence. A push for that alongside net zero if that's what you want to do, but just saying, listen, we're going to be lifting taxes and all that sort of thing. Two little things.
But he could do that. A, he's not going to do it. Exactly. And B, I mean, or you could say, hey, you know what? We're going to have to cut that welfare bill by a third because we need to pay for those defences.
Well, that's going to go
Even the defence pledges we've seen. And again, and I hold this against Karen and Osborne as well from 2010 onwards. I know that things were tight. But and also, by the way, the defence chiefs over the years, okay, it's all very well. Oh, we're now speaking out, you know, after leaving office. And again, I get it's very difficult to speak out when you're in office. But, oh, my God, we've supposedly got these, you know, top military, we've got these top civil servants in the MOD and the like, just quietly allowing, you know, every single one of our frigates and God knows what. I mean, I don't know all the terminology. I don't pretend to be. You get these blokes saying, I love Type 23. What's that? They don't sodding know. But they don't. They're all BSing, most of these people. But you know, the military do know, and they know. You know, you need to have. You know, you've got 6 of these. You know, was it only one's supposed to be in port at any one time on maintenance, and we've got 5 in port. Yeah. Sorry, something's going horribly wrong, and we need to deal with it.
It's the same with the Trident deterrence system, by the way. In case anybody's interested, half of it isn't operational, and when we test fire the missiles, they don't work either.
We don't do enough
because
test
it's
firing,
too expensive.
Let's talk about the latest Ayatollah, because we had an interim leader, didn't we? He lasted only a little bit of time. I'm thinking people are going. Wonderful moment at the BBC said an 80-person council elected the new Ayatollah. 80-person. I'm going to go with 80-man. Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb.
80 theys.
80 they thems. 80 they thems. Non-binary cleric.
Have decided on an it that's going to be the Ayatollah. I mean, it transcends gender.
It does, absolutely. But it's the dead Ayatollah Khamenei's son, Mujtaba Khamenei. He's been named... I'm going to do a bit of that. He's been named Iran's new supreme leader, which is weird, because, I mean, fun fact, Iran... Iran has had as many female leaders as the Labour Party. And no, Harriet Harman and Margaret Beckett don't count. They were acting leaders.
It's another Nepo baby. It's appalling. There's no meritocracy anymore in the world. It's just who you know or who you're related to, honestly. I thought Iran was much more progressive than
this guy is supposed to be pretty hardline.
Oh,
I mean, there's not been a picture seen of him in 2 years or something. But
even if he wasn't pretty hardline, his dad's just been whacked by the great Satan.
His father, mother, wife.
Do we think he's going to be in a particularly chill mood?
No, but this thing, it's amazing. The reporters are saying at the moment, or the broadcasters saying, he's unlikely to want to negotiate. No,
he doesn't have a choice.
And this nonsense that with these negotiations ongoing, they're taking the mick. You don't negotiate with terrorists. That's what they are. These people will lie and do anything. They've been negotiating on their nuclear power, nuclear weaponry and development for years. It's all a lie. It's all just a con. You don't negotiate with these people. I think Donald Trump, and more importantly, I think Netanyahu is completely right on this, because they face an existential battle when it comes to this. But do you think anything changed with this new guy, or is he just basically it's a new game of whack and Ayatollah, isn't it?
I don't think anything changes with this guy. I think there are elements within the IRGC that are more practical than others. This is the thing to remember about Iran. It's actually very decentralised in terms of all of its hierarchies and its structures, precisely so that if you take out an Ayatollah, the system doesn't collapse.
As we've seen with these attacks on Oman and everywhere
So there are some elements that are going to be more pragmatic, more practical. Ironically, one of them was just taken out by the Israelis, but that's beside the point. There are others. The question is who actually holds the majority of the cards, because other parts will continue regardless. Let's say a pragmatic faction of the IRGC takes control. That's not to say that other more radical factions of the IRGC who are in control of other areas of defence don't go, hang on, no, we don't want to negotiate, we're going to carry on firing stuff off. That's the slight issue that you have here.
And that's what we've
interesting.
Seen.
The key thing here is all about the nuclear timeline. Is it still ongoing? You suspect it probably is, actually. And when Donald Trump said, I think this war could be over in 4 weeks, that really stood out to me, because I was kind of sat there thinking, that sounds suspiciously like a window in which you might be trying to make the jump to fully enrich uranium, at which point you can load it onto a warhead. I don't think it's so much, it'll be done in 4 weeks. I think we've got a 4-week window to get a lot of destruction done and out of the way and see where
But the really, really key thing here is that the people say we're not quite sure about what the war aims are. Donald Trump, on the night of those attacks from Mar-a-Lago, in this situation room set up there, he made it really clear what those war aims were, which was to stop the nuclear capability, stop the threat to the neighbours, and stop the threat to America as well. Bearing in mind, if you want to be a regime in the Middle East, you want to say death to America and as 2 assassination attempts on Donald Trump's life, then I'm sorry, that is what is going to happen. He's made it very... He said, look, for people of Iran, you can rise up, this is your opportunity. But regime change is not one of the aims. And this is very different from, say, what happened in Afghanistan, and particularly what happened in Iraq, where it was like, we're going to take our democracy. And again, what a lot of us might have expected in Venezuela, remove Maduro and these basically completely and utterly corrupt, drug lords, effectively, from this regime. No. Just going to put a deputy in. I'm not bothered, but anyone who's a problem for me in America, you're going to be gone. Is everyone clear?
Yeah.
Now, I think that's actually... It may not feel like the most moral position. It may feel like, we want to take our democracy and our Western values. And Iran is probably the only country in the Middle East, other than Israel, where that might be feasible.
Yeah, ironically.
However, there is an argument, and it's perfectly legitimate for him to say that's not my problem. But if you make your leadership a problem for my country, you make your leadership a problem for my key ally Israel, then I'm going to come and get you.
Yeah.
I have no issue with this.
The key thing, if we think that the move towards regime change then becomes on the table, it's going to be through a ground invasion. That's not going to be Israeli or American troops. That'll have to happen with other proxies in the region, most likely the Kurds or the Azeris or the Balakis. Now, it's possible, but that's not about regime change. That's about keeping ground forces occupied to give the ordinary people enough breathing space. That's what the key thing is there. It's not about American democracy or anything like that. That is about balkanization and keeping the ground forces occupied.
So much more to talk about. We barely even touched the size of it. We're going to talk about the King State visit. Also, this new anti-Muslim hostility czar that we're going to get announced today as part of the government's new Cohesion strategy, protecting what matters. I'll tell you right now, categorically, it won't promote cohesion, it won't protect what matters, and the Tsar will be a danger to our freedom of speech as opposed to protecting Muslims from what I would regard as absolutely outrageous attacks simply for having their religion. But we're going to talk about all of that. And also attacks on jury trials at Axing could face Tuesday could face a pretty big rebellion from Labour MPs. Some 80 Labour MPs set to rebel, we're told, on that. Plenty more besides, including that supposed sort of attack on the Green Party brand new MP Hannah Spencer in Manchester, we're told, by transphobic protesters. I've watched a few videos from different angles. Looked to me like the people holding up the placards, the banners, weren't actually causing any trouble at all. They were just simply asking a public figure in a public role about her views on things. But we'll see. Anyway, all that coming up. I want to hear from you. Any of your thoughts whatsoever on what we're talking about, in particular about Donald Trump saying that surging world oil prices are a small price to pay for defeating the threat from Iran. Your reaction to that and anything else, give us a call. 0344 499 1000. We'll get your calls up next. This is Talk.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 10:27 is the time. Let's get straight to your messages and your calls coming in, particularly about Donald Trump saying that surging world oil prices are a small price to pay for defeating the threat from Iran, particularly the nuclear threat. Ian's got in touch, says, unfortunately, Donald doesn't have to pay my £150 per month electricity bill. This is a fair point. I mean, I imagine that bill at Mar-a-Lago is quite high. And that gold sort of palace inside Trump Tower. Chaz, what happened to not interfering in foreign countries? Again, I think his point is I don't care about what happens in the country. He doesn't care about the Iranian people. I don't think he cares about them at all. He's making don't care about the Venezuelans, don't care about anybody. But if the leadership threaten me... threaten America, which they clearly do. Grant says we've had Miliband's lunacy create some of the world's highest energy prices during relatively normal times. Watch Labour go into hiding. We're on our own. Good luck, everyone. Alexander says so much for America first. And Peter says let the rich oil barons take the hit and keep the prices the same. Trump would be an instant hero to Americans. Oh, he would. Don't think it's going to happen. Let's go to Alan, who's in Salford, wants to have his say. Hello, Alan. What do you want to tell us?
Yes, hello, Julia.
Hello.
I've just been watching the lapdog of Europe speaking again. The art of
language now, gentlemen. Language.
sorry about the art.
Apologies. Say it again. Apologies, everybody, for that language from Alan.
Of this country. Yes, he was saying that this country's doing well. We're resilient, and we're a diverse country. And then he started talking about the oil prices, but we know what that means.
Yep.
They can't balance a budget. They're banging the prices up anyway. So he's just using it. He's burying it in bad news as usual.
Well, they will try and use this as an excuse for how bad things do get on the energy front, but it was already bad.
Bad news, don't it? All the things that need to be talked about are buried now, aren't they? The Great Gang cases and stuff like that. But on this Iran, this Iranian, they're Nazis. They're actually Islamic Nazis, and they should have been finished a long time ago. Jimmy Carter was the one who really should have done it when they kidnapped those people.
They took hostage, yeah.
He should have gone in there and wiped the floor with them. We wouldn't have had this now. We'd have had none of this nonsense.
When that's the thing, Iran has been allowed to build up power. It's an incredibly, it's a huge country, huge, natural wealth and natural resources and stuff. Do you think that then what Donald Trump, well, again, it's Israel and America, do you think what they've done is the right thing at the right time or not?
Yes. If he's really going to destroy everything, the Iranian Guard and everything, yes, and let the people take over. Do you know the generation in Iran? I think that between 50, up to 50, there's about 40, 50%, and 60% of young people there. They want freedom. They don't want anything else but freedom.
Yeah.
We're free now at the moment. Well, we are. We was, but
we're freer than them.
That way we're not. But
that's for sure. That's for sure. Yeah. So you think it's been worth it, and it will be worth it. And will you still be saying that when your heating bill doubles?
Yeah, but it's going in now. It's going up again, isn't it?
Yeah.
So. But what he should do, this net zero, he should scrap it completely now. It's going to cost us £800 billion over the next 20 years.
No, it's not. It's going to cost us way more. I mean, genuinely, way more than that. That's the reality. It's going to be ridiculous. Alan, thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Ian, who's in London. Hello, Ian. What do you want to say?
Good morning, Julia.
Good morning.
Now, I'm just going to play devil's advocate. And argue the Iranian regime's case.
Yep.
Because no one else is doing it, and there doesn't be any balance. Right? In 1950,
sorry, wait a minute. Did we need to have someone argue Adolf Hitler's case during the Second World War?
No.
Just checking. Just checking.
It's really not the same, honestly. Look, in 1953, the West deposed a democratic leader, Mohammad Mossadegh, to take the oil and supply Israel with oil.
Yep.
We installed the Shah, who looted the country for personal wealth.
I agree with all of that.
And his personal elite. He was overthrown in 1979, and ever since then, sanctions were imposed. Then we had the Iran-Iraq war at the connivance of the West, and we supplied...
No, that wasn't at the connivance of the West.
Oh, I think you'll find it was.
It wasn't. Okay, carry on.
Let's get all the files released from Washington, we'll find out. And that's how WMD found its way into Iraq, with gas and stuff like that, and chemical weapons.
I mean, that's it. The reason why the West thought that Iraq had chemical weapons is we'd supplied the sorting things to them.
Yeah, and because we got the receipts.
Yeah.
Now, Israel has nuclear weapons, while Iran does not.
Israel doesn't threaten all of its neighbours. Israel has nuclear weapons. They've never admitted to having nuclear weapons, but we know they do.
I'm only being devil's advocate.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Sanctions continue to foment internal dissent within in Iran because they got nothing to eat, whatever, because of the world sanctions.
Well, that's actually mostly it's down to the corruption and the incompetence of the regime.
I'm still being devil's advocate, now, there is a nuclear generation technology that doesn't produce weapons-grade material using thorium. So I don't know whether that's been sold to them.
Anyway, come on, get to your point. Get to your point. Come on.
I know. And there are 4 nuclear reactors operating in the United Emirates. Now, seeing that from that point of view, the optics are not good. And the hypocrisy of the West's relation with Saudi Arabia and Israel is not lost on them.
I don't see what. Yeah, I mean, I know you're playing devil's advocate. I don't see what's hypocritical. It's really, really simple. Do any of these countries pose an immediate threat, an imminent threat to either their neighbours, as we've seen with the bombing of numerous Middle Eastern countries by the last week, or to the West? Yes, those countries don't, and Iran does. That's all you need to know.
Well, now you found the hole in my argument.
It's a very big crater-sized hole caused by one of those weapons, isn't it? Ian, I'm going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your call. Let's go straight to a break. Then we're going to be talking to former Security Minister, still Conservative MP, Tom Tugendhat. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get straight to my next guest now, Conservative MP and former Security Minister Tom Tugendhat. A very good morning to you, Tom.
Morning, Julia. How are you?
Very well indeed. Thank you for joining us. So much I want to get to. Let's just ask you first, though, about what Keir Starmer has had to say this morning, talking about it's a fundamental principle that it's the UK PM who decides when Britain's military is used. He's had we were told, quite a humbling phone call with Donald Trump yesterday. Interestingly, the first phone call they'd actually had since this conflict began, which is frankly a little bit humiliating, I think, for our role in the world and with our biggest security and economic ally. But the Prime Minister has made it very clear. He says, you know, he wants to reassure people who are feeling anxious about the Iran war, and is saying the government's going to do what it can to deal with the issue of energy prices. What do you make of what he's had to say?
Well, look, first off, I mean, it's pretty remarkable to have got himself into a position where those who support Israel in the United States are hostile to him, and those who oppose Israel in the United States are hostile to him. I mean, that's
quite a talent.
It's quite an achievement. I mean, I must say, you know, politically, that's remarkable. Look, I mean, I think fundamentally, of course he's right. Of course he's right that it's up to a UK Prime Minister to defend UK interests, you know, just as it's up to a US President to defend US interests. And, you know, there are times when they're lying, and great, and there are times when they don't. And, OK, well, then, you know, Britain should have a separate policy on them, as we did in Vietnam, as bluntly we did in the Falkland Islands as well. Of course it's true that we have different interests, and it's up to him as British Prime Minister to defend those interests. But one of those interests, and let me just be quite clear about that, one of those interests is maintaining a close security partnership with the United States, even when we disagree, and perhaps even especially when we disagree. It's perfectly possible, and in fact, I disagree with the United States and Israel on striking Iran. I wouldn't have engaged in this action, but nor would I have stopped them using our air bases. Why? Because I can see that they've got a perfectly legitimate, lawful use or lawful argument for attacking. I happen to think it's unwise. That doesn't make it unlawful. And so I think that they have a perfectly rational request when they ask to use our air bases. Somehow or other, Keir Starmer has managed to make us less popular in Washington and less popular in Tehran all in one go.
It's quite extraordinary, and with his own Labour backbenchers. You say, you know, you believe this is lawful. I don't even know how you will, for a nanosecond, regard.
I do believe it's lawful.
Yes, exactly. I genuinely, I think it's absurd when anyone says this is not lawful. I mean, I just wonder whether people can even read properly. I mean, it's quite obvious the attacks from Iran, you know, on America, the threats, the open threats. There's no question at all. This is a defensive action. You say, though, it's unwise. Why do you think it is unwise?
Well, the thing that I think is unwise is we haven't set out any specific objective. Now, it is possible that you could set out an objective of regime change, but in that case, what's your alternative? Where are you looking to get a power base from? It's possible that you're saying you're striking solely military targets. Again, that's possible, but that's not what the US or Israeli administrations have said. Now, I think it's perfectly lawful, by the way, and indeed the right thing to do would be for the UK to have a ship in the Gulf shooting down, or rather assisting in shooting down, those things that are flying towards our allies in the UAE or Bahrain or Saudi or whatever. And I think that would be the right thing to do. And if that meant occasionally striking targets in Iran that were launching the launching capabilities, then I can understand that. But if you're engaging in a large-scale military operation, as this appears to be, and the US and Israel are talking about bigger things coming, what those bigger things are, I don't know, then it would be helpful to know what the aim is. Otherwise, it's very difficult to get allies to work with you.
But the American president has been very clear about what the aim is, and that is a nuclear-free Iran that is no longer a threat to, along with Benjamin Netanyahu, a threat to Israel or a threat to America or a threat to America's allies in the Middle East. These are very, very clear. They don't include regime change. That if you want, that's an added bonus. And if the Iranian people want to rise up, he's been very clear repeatedly what the war aims are. They just aren't war aims a lot of people like.
No, well, let me just challenge you on that, because actually those war aims, if they were the war aims, there were things that I could support. But he has also said that he will decide who the next head of state is of Iran. He's also said that he will decide how the country is governed. So, he's the problem with you know this and I know this. The problem is that Donald Trump often says many different things.
This is true.
And it's always difficult and possibly even unwise to guess one knows which one is he's serious about and which one he's not. So I'm just a little bit cautious that we haven't yet had a strategic plan. We haven't yet had a proper strategic aim set out.
And a lot of people, I think, I'm certainly included in this, would be more comfortable with a president who had perhaps had a more strategic understanding of these things, who was in charge of this. What do you make, though, of, let's face it, the dithering and the shilly-shallying and the what shall I do, how do I stop offending everybody, as you've already discussed, from Keir Starmer when it comes to our actual military capability, protecting our military base in Cyprus, I say offering support, and the stuff that's now emerging about we just literally don't have a military hardware in we don't have a ship in the Middle East. We'd sent them a load to Greenland, and now we're going to have to bring them back. We've got a huge number of our ships are actually in dock undergoing maintenance. We can't dispatch a ship at less than 5 or 10 days' notice. This is a national wake-up call to the humiliation of the hollowing out of our military capability, isn't it?
That's completely right, Julia. And let's be honest, it started in the late 90s reasonably, as we were taking a bit of a peace dividend from the Cold War, and that was totally understandable. But I'm afraid it got worse in the 2000s, and let's be honest, we didn't do enough to fix it, when we were in government, and that was a mistake.
It was cut by a third under the coalition government.
Well, different bits were cut, exactly right, and that was a mistake. I was a soldier at the time, and I remember working in the MOD and seeing the impact of that and being very critical. At the time, of course, in private because I was a serving officer, but later being very critical in public, because you may remember in the 2018-19 period, I was calling for 3% because I just couldn't see how this peace dividend would last. And now we're faced with the consequences. Now there are some things that are long term, so we don't have enough destroyers. We have 6. We should have 12. We have too few frigates. We have too few submarines and all the rest of it. Too few aircraft as well. But there are other things that could have been done, in the last 2 or 3 months. Had Dragon, Duncan, or Dauntless been ordered to the Gulf a month or 2 ago, the readiness would have meant that, yes, it would have taken a week or 2 to be ready, but they'd be there by now.
Yeah.
And those are decisions that I'm afraid the government didn't take.
But can I ask you? I don't believe for a nanosecond that Keir Starmer understands any of this any more than I do. Is this something, though, that the senior military should have been saying to the government, look, this is where things are going. We need to have those ships there. We're going to need the funding for this. You're going to have to order us. Does any of that happen inside government?
Yes, it does. And let's just be clear. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when we had enough ships, the First Sea Lord would just have ordered it. It would just have happened because moving a ship wasn't a huge deal. We had plenty of ships, so you just move one. Whereas now that we have too few ships, moving a ship is a strategic decision. Moving a ship is a decision taken by the Prime Minister. Now, that's ridiculous. Moving a single ship should not be a Prime Ministerial decision. It should be taken not even by the First Sea Lord. It should be taken by the Fleet Commander. Because we have too few, these decisions go higher and higher because the impact of being, for example, in the Middle East and not in Greenland or whatever it happens to be, means, a very different strategic laydown, and the politics of it are bigger. And this is why I've been adamant that we need a bigger fleet for so long, because actually you need to reduce this from being a major political decision to being a simple tactical or strategic decision, an operational decision.
Genuinely, I think the whole of the last week has just been a national humiliation. Do you agree?
Look, I don't like using that word, and the reason I don't, and I'm not saying I disagree with you, I'm just saying I don't like using that word because I am eternally proud to be British. I am very, very proud of our Royal Navy.
So am I, which is why I don't want my country humiliated.
No, and which is why what I see it as a major wake-up call and a real slap in the face. Those are the terms I'll use, but I get your point.
Just very briefly, do you think the King's visit planned next month to the US, is reciprocal visit after Donald Trump visited here, do you think that should be cancelled or delayed?
No, I don't. I think the connection between our two peoples is something pretty remarkable. And people talk about the special relationship as though it's it's the bond between the Prime Minister and the President. It's not. It's the fact that there are people in the United States today who are my brothers because I served with them in battle in Iraq and Afghanistan, and they will be whoever's in number 10 and whoever's in the White House. There are businesses that are invested in the UK and vice versa that are going to keep investing because we see the world similarly, because we understand each other's economy. The reality is the special relationship is nothing. I mean, of course it includes the military and of course it includes security, but it's the fact that fundamentally we are very, very similar. We understand each other's lives, as it were, and we share, broadly speaking, an outlook, and that's what the relationship is, and that's what the King is celebrating.
And just finally, again, also briefly, there's been calls from MPs and peers for the Home Secretary to ban a planned sort of pro-Iran march. We've already seen, university societies and others sort of mourning the death of the last but one. We had an interim, now we've got a new one, his son, Ayatollah Khamenei. Should there be a ban on such a march?
Look, I find the idea that anybody would want to protest in favour of people who murder a rape victim because she was raped. I mean, just astonishing.
A girl, and a teenage girl,
exactly right. A teenage girl who was raped was hanged for the crime of being raped. I mean, it's extraordinary. I mean,
that's how crazy these people are. Yeah, no, fair enough. I really appreciate you joining us. So much more I want to talk about. Times Against Us, Tom Tugendhat, Conservative MP, former Security Minister. Thank you very much, Steve, for that. Benedict Spence, can I just come back to you just on the issue? The King's visit, should that be cancelled? That's become sort of one of those sort of the tabloid sort of discussions, as if that's the biggest thing going on.
Yeah, obviously it's not really important. I don't think it actually should go ahead right now, because I do think, precisely for that reason, it's a bit of a tawdry distraction. It doesn't actually solve anything. It might be quite embarrassing, depending on whatever it is Donald Trump says to the King whilst he's there.
But also, if there is still a war on.
Yeah.
I think if there's still a war on, I'm thinking no.
I just think it's unnecessary at this moment in time. We've already got the diplomatic issue of the World Cup coming down the road. Let's not add to the bonfire.
OK, fair enough. 10:47 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be talking to Israeli Foreign Ministry Special Envoy Fleur Hassan Nahum about what is going on at home in Israel. This is Talk.
Current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! You shut up! I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:49 is the time. Let's talk right now to the former Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem, now Israeli Foreign Ministry Special Envoy Fleur Hassan Nahum. A very good morning to you, Fleur.
Morning, Julia.
Having met you when I was out in Israel, I'm glad you are safe. Glad many of the people I met out in Israel are safe. Of course, I'm an Israeli shill, as you know. I get my 7,000 shekels every minute.
I'm glad somebody does.
I am so rich right now, I can't tell you. But look, let's talk about what's been going on First of all, let's talk about the new Ayatollah, who is the former Ayatollah, not the interim, the one he's already, the two of them down, son, Mujtaba Khamenei, named as the new supreme leader of Iran. Now, Donald Trump has already said, that he's not got my approval. There's no reason to think that this changes anything, is there? Or is this man going to be likely to be even more hardline than the previous Ayatollah?
We already know he's more hardline than the previous Ayatollah. He was very involved in the cruel quelling of the protests a couple of decades ago, as well as the Women Life Freedom protests, where he imprisoned and ordered the rape, the torture, and the murder of hundreds of women. So we know he's worse than his father, if that's even possible. We don't know if he's got the same authority as his father, religious authority as his father. And there is part of their conclave, or whatever they call themselves, the Council of Elders, that were against his appointment, because for the very reason they were against the Shah of Iran. They said, we don't believe in monarchies. And now we've got the son of Khomeini. But I think they just don't want to upset the apple cart. But this guy is a rotten apple as much as his father.
Well, realistically, given the tentacles of Israeli intelligence that we have seen over the last few years in Iran, unlikely to last very long. In terms of how long,
hopefully not.
Well, exactly. I'm good with that. I'm not going to lie. In terms of how long this is going to last, the president of the United States has said, it's to be 4 weeks. He said, for instance, that it's a small price to pay as the oil and gas prices have rocketed as a result of this war. Is it a small price to pay? And why? Tell my audience why you think, actually, your energy prices, the cost of everything you buy in the supermarket, everything that you buy that's made using oil, fossil fuels, or transported with it, if this carries on, why that is basically a price worth paying?
Well, let me tell you what price we're paying here. We're running to shelters day and night. There are people who don't sleep, people with little kids. There are people who've set up camping in underground car parks, so that they can sleep through the night. We've had the UAE, they've received over 1,000 missiles, drones, ballistic and otherwise, Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Cyprus. So we're paying the price in our physical lives. Today, we had another rocket attack where one person died and 2 people were injured. Yesterday, 2 people seriously injured. Last week, 8 people died, and amongst them 3 children. So we're paying the price with our lives. And the reason why we're paying the price is because the Islamic Republic of Iran is the Hitler of our era. It is not me who knows, but the whole of the UK, that they foiled 20 attacks in the UK. We're talking about the IRGC, which, by the way, has not been prescribed yet in the UK, which is something I'm shocked about. They are attacking Europe. They have cells in South America. If people can't understand, when people say, why didn't the world see what was going on with Hitler in the 30s? And why did we have to get to a Second World War? Well, there was one guy who did see it, and that was Churchill. But everybody else was on the side of Chamberlain, who came back and saying we have peace in our time. This is what we're dealing with right now. The Islamic Republic of Iran is the Hitler of our generation, of our era. And so which side are we going to be on? Are we going to stand firm and do the right thing for the next generations, for our children or our grandchildren? Or we're just going to hide under the table and say, it's got nothing to do with us. It's got to do with everyone.
Very understandable in Israel when, Iran has been, spending hundreds of billions on funding, whether it's Hamas, whether it's Hezbollah, whether it's the Houthi rebels, and Israel has been quite clearly under attack. I mean, Iran is ultimately responsible for what Hamas did on October the 7th, responsible for those rockets from Hezbollah. They're paying for it all. We know that. But what do you say to people who say, well, I'm very sorry you're in an air raid shelter, but you chose to, the Israeli government chose to launch those weapons at Iran. You knew what was going to happen as a result. And they'll say, I don't see what it's got to do with us here in the West. We're going about our daily lives. This is a you problem, not an us problem. What do you say to that?
That's short-term thinking, because when you look at the people funding the worst possible radical mosques in your country and all of the stuff that's going on, which is very widely reported, and the Islamization of your society as well as other countries around the world, who do you think is behind all that? Who does anybody think is behind all that? The vortex, the center of the Shia universe, that is the radical Islamist universe, is the Islamic Republic of Iran. All of these other Islamist organizations orbit Iran. And so, yes, we're in the firing line right now, but you're in the firing line in the future. And if you don't understand this, this is the same thing Churchill had to convince the Americans of before they joined the Second World War and saved the world.
If people aren't recognising, you're saying it is going to become the problem. Now, here's the thing in terms of the war aims. We've just been discussing that with former Security Minister Tom Tugendhat. Such as we understand, as he says, American war aims, which may or may not change depending on what Donald Trump is saying that day. War aims of America in terms of we don't want you to be a threat anymore, end of not having nuclear weapons. They're slightly different from what Israel's war aims are, and indeed the war aims perhaps of the majority of Iranian people who would be gladly rid of the last Ayatollah, would love to get rid of the next one, and would love to actually live in a more secular, sane, thriving, functioning country, with or without democracy. But in terms of how Israel's war aims different, what does your government aim to achieve with this war, and how does it end?
Well, that's a great question. What we want to achieve is no longer to have Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, to be an existential threat to Israel. Remember, these people were marching towards a weapon of mass destruction at the same time saying Israel has to be wiped off the face of the earth. So who can live like that? We can't live like that. Who would want to live like that? But the conventional and the unconventional weapons were also going to go to Europe. And that's what I'm saying. It's short-term thinking to think that we're the only people in the firing line. It turns out many other people in the firing line. How does this end? Look, these people are very entrenched. This is a very entrenched poison. In my fantasy, of course, you would have the IRGC understanding that they can't win, giving up their arms. Trump offered them immunity and running away, God knows where. But in reality, I think it's going to take a little bit more than that. But I think that in the short term, if we can actually neutralize their way of attacking the rest of us, and then it's game over for them. If they have no way of attacking anyone, it's only a matter of time before the good people of Iran take over and create alternative leadership with the help of all the different minorities who are ready to fight and put boots on the ground.
Well, we shall wait and see. Fleur Hassan-Nahum, Israeli Foreign Ministry Special Voice, thank you so much as always for joining us. Benedict Spence, listening to that. She's making a point. Look, this regime is a Hitler of our times. Wake up call to the West. They're under immediate threat. So so are we. We've got our heads in the sand. Do you agree?
I agree that they are a threat. I mean, as we can see right now, the impact that this war is having on the global energy system, they are a threat and they couldn't be allowed to perpetuate. But the problem is, it's not a foregone conclusion that this is going to go our way. No. The Iranians can win this war, and that's going to require an awful lot of, concentration.
When you say the Iranians, the Iranian regime.
Well, yeah, that's who we're talking about here. Because the key thing here is the sheer number of men that they have on the ground, and that's partly why people say that a ground...
is 650,000
Yeah, that's partly why people say that a ground invasion is very difficult, only would succeed if you balkanize it. But the point is, if you want the people to rise up, there's going to have to be an awful lot of those people taken out, because they're not just there to stop an external invasion. They exist to repress the people. Yeah. Without that happening, the people cannot.
And they are religious nutters as well. I mean, absolutely. They really are.
They're dedicated.
They absolutely believe in it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fascinating. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all the conversations we had. Coming up in the next hour, we're also going to be talking about the small matter of the government's new cohesion strategy. So they're going to make we're just going to be wonderfully cohesive society. It's all going to be lovely and wonderful. In particular, we're going to have an anti-Muslim hostility czar. So that's going to solve all the problems we've got, hasn't it? We're going to talk about that. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So 344 499 1000. This is Talk.
UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. I am your new Supreme Leader. Come on, it's only a matter of time, guys. Only a matter of time. Anyway, whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you very much indeed for your company. Don't forget, if you missed anything from the show, we had a rip-roaring first hour. You can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Obviously, we're going to be discussing in this hour the latest on the US and Israel's war on Iran. Labour appointing in anti-Muslim hate czar this week, and the Home Secretary under pressure to ban an annual pro-Iran march in support of the Supreme Leader. Yeah, I don't think that one should be really on to debate. I think that's a pretty obvious no. Plus the Green Party brand new MP, Hannah Spencer, she had to be, basically got protection in a police car after a brawl broke out during a trans rights protest in Manchester. But who was actually to blame? Well, I'm going to talk about all of that, plenty more besides. And joining me for the chat today, delighted to say, is Conservative commentator Benedict Spence. Morning.
Good morning.
Lots to talk about today. One of the things, obviously, I'm asking about in particular, we've had Keir Starmer's rather humiliating phone call with Trump yesterday. Apparently the first time they've spoken since the conflagration broke out. I mean, that's embarrassing. You think Tony Blair wouldn't have been, involved in the conversation beforehand? You think he would have been first person on the phone? I mean, come on. You can have your criticisms, but at least he kind of knew how to be a leader, for goodness sake. Even Boris Johnson, I think, would have managed that, wouldn't he? But Donald Trump has, and indeed our Prime Minister, having to confront the idea of these surging world oil prices, oil and gas, and basically, even though Ed Miliband clearly doesn't understand these things, 80% of the fuel used in this country and indeed the world is fossil fuel. So when you cut off the Strait of Hormuz, which is right in the Middle East, and basically a fifth of the world's oil and gas can't get out and they can't send it out, so they stop production, you end up in very, very, very difficult circumstances, because it's this thing called supply and demand. And I know Ed Miliband doesn't understand this. Pretty sure, actually, the Prime Minister and indeed the Chancellor don't understand this. But this is Economics 101. When the supply goes down and demand stays the same, the price goes up. And that is what we are seeing. Now, but Donald Trump has said that it's a price worth paying. Basically, a small price to pay for defeating the threat from Iran of oil prices going up. He, of course, has got midterm elections in November. Early voting starts as early as September. So he'll be facing some concerns about that among his own party supporters and voters in America. Keir Starmer today has been out and about at some community centre. Sorry, guys, someone's got to take the hit of the Monday morning visit from Keir Starmer. He has said that he will, he wants to reassure people about the impact of oil price hikes. And apparently ministers are considering freezing energy bills. Remember what happened in 2022 when we saw the invasion of Ukraine by Russia and energy prices just went through the roof. And of course, Liz Truss put that little cap on it, and then everyone said, "Oh, it's awful," when anyone who's in government would have done the same. That's paid for by taxes. We're going to pay for it anyway, but it's going to pay for it over a longer period. Anyway, all that's happening, but I want to know from you, when Donald Trump says that surging world oil prices are a small price to pay for defeating the threat from Iran, what's your reaction to that? Do you think he's right? Are you absolutely not prepared to pay an extra penny on your gas or your electricity bill, or indeed for anything in the supermarket because of this? Let me know. 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost £1. Standard network rate message. Benedict Spence, I'm just coming back to that question. Is it a small price to pay? Is it a price worth paying?
It's a huge price, and it's going to be paid either way. What I would say is that this is a situation, a scenario where, say, if you were a fossil fuel rich country away from the regions, say somewhere like the North Sea, you ought to be fine. Equally, if you're the sort of country that had, say, rolled out nuclear power over the last 20 years, using the profits from your oil and gas industry to sort of meet in the middle so that prices didn't go up too much in the short term, again, you ought to be fine. Are there any such countries that fulfill that criteria?
Gosh.
I can't really think.
Do
Anyway.
call in 03244 499
Sadly, all of our bills are about to skyrocket and nothing is going to change.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, again, some of these countries that are being affected with this 24-mile strait being closed and in the Middle East, the biggest producers of liquid natural gas. Well, liquefied natural gas. Well, that's what we import because we don't get it out the North Sea on the same scale.
Which we could, but have chosen not
we choose not to.
Exactly.
We don't frack and we don't do all those things.
Norway's,
Tories just as much to blame, by the way, on this one, but Labour are even worse.
The two examples that you go to, Norway, which shares all of these oil and gas fields with us, and France, which did the nuclear thing, they're both relatively fine. France is able to export nuclear electricity at almost zero cost at wholesale prices because it is so abundant. Norway has got a massive sovereign wealth fund that allows its people to live pretty comfortably despite it not really producing much else. And you just think, well, if only somebody had the foresight that this sort of thing might happen, that, say, a rogue regime that is right there in the middle of the world's, one of the world's most wealthy fossil fuel areas might decide to kick off, might get dangerous.
I think you'll find that Ed Miliband would point out if we'd moved to net zero sooner, then it would be fine. Because apparently Ed Miliband, totally and utterly unaware of the fact you can't make concrete or steel or warships or fertilizer or food with just solar and wind power. Apparently he's literally the person in charge of this and doesn't know this stuff, which I find, I'm not going to lie, a little bit scary.
Listen, I know that we're not a tyrannical country and we don't go in for big unusual punishments for people, but I will vote for whoever promises to take every single person who has trashed the oil and gas sector in this country and stymied the rollout of nuclear power, takes them all, puts them on a ship, sends them to South Georgia to be banished there forever. Guys, there's lots of wind in South Georgia. Let's build your utopia there.
Fill your boots. I'm very much with you that all the people who are voting for net zero and support all this, if you think the world's going to, disaster, and that's what you believe, absolutely fine. You'd pay for the energy hike. The rest of us will stay on the old tariff. Thank you very much. As you say, it's not going to be a small price to pay. It's going to be a big price to pay. This is going to hit Trump. It's also going to hit Starmer. But in the same way as, again, the invasion of Ukraine, that caused the massive inflation and the massive hikes we saw with energy bills and everything at the supermarkets. Remember, 11.1% we got to with inflation. And again, Labour were very big on this is Tory inflation. But it wasn't. Whoever had been in charge would have seen that. But the other thing is this is going to also ramp up interest rates. We're not going to see interest rate cuts as we've been expecting over the next few months. And again, who pay? It's not just your mortgage. It's not just the businesses that have got loans. It's also going to be the government what is it? 110 billion quid a year we already spend just to service the interest on all. We're not even paying off. This is even worse than those student loans under Plan 2. I mean, this is how bad it is. You ain't never paying that off. So when those interest rates go up, poor old Rachel Reeves, as if we shall feel sorry for the chess not champion. Rachel from accounts, she's going to face even worse problems because of this, because of course there isn't going to be any money spare. Do you have any sympathy for them at all?
No, I don't, actually, because they are all part, as much as they might try to differentiate themselves from the Tories, they're part of the same political elite that have the same worldview.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. In terms of, I've been off for the last week, falling down mountains, and as I say, I want to say a big thank you again to Marta in makeup department who managed to. I've got a shiner, not actually from falling down a mountain. It was a troublesome door, and I was sober, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But thanks for great work, Martha. Appreciate that, hiding it for me. But I think going on the YouTube with a shiner, not a good look. But I was watching it from afar because I always like to take a week off when World War III starts. But I'm watching it from afar. It's just extraordinary to see just this national humiliation being played out. Keir Starmer can't decide. Donald Trump, okay, look, he says a lot of things, but Donald Trump basically saying, Winston Churchill, we knew that, but then also saying, look, we don't need you to join us now. When we've already won the war. And by the way, Emmanuel Macron has just arrived in Cyprus amid amid the Iran war effort. But he's going to Cyprus. Our Prime Minister isn't, after our military base was hit by Iranian attacks.
This is going to happen. The next thing that is going to happen is EU countries are going to start putting a lot of pressure on the UK to relinquish those bases to be given to an EU country. That's going to happen. There will be, artificially created protests on Cyprus from paid protesters to turn up saying Brits out of Akrotiri, we want decolonisation, all that sort of thing. It's going to happen because that's the playbook. And the problem is our Prime Minister, our government are weak enough to do that, to go along with it, if they think it'll, make ties with the European Union easier. They'd be more than happy to do that. It's the sort of thing. And all that I would just say finally is, I'm really happy that Argentina is a basket case right now, because if they were inclined to invade the Falkland Islands, I do not believe our Prime Minister would defend them. That's the position that we're in. He would not do it.
He'd pay to give them away. Normal things. I've just been handed breaking news. The AA. Now I've got a lot of time for the AA. Edmund King, president of the AA, he was regular on the show. But he said that people should drive less to save fuel as the war in the Middle East sends oil prices surging. So RAC has also said avoid harsh accelerating and braking to help eke out every last mile and save money. Drivers should consider, says the AA, cutting out some non-essential journeys and changing their driving style to conserve fuel. Oh, and when it's cold, put on a jumper. I mean, look, I know they're just giving advice to motorists. Look, there are ways you can actually use energy. Look, but it's
the fact that we've got to
the
this
whole of our entire economy is now run on the basis of let's consume less, don't have your heating on, use less light, use less energy, eat less. No, I don't want to. I want to live in a land of plenty, and the only reason it's not a land of plenty is because these insane economic and net zero policies. And we would, as you say, we would not be hit so hard if we had more sane policies, and that comes down to political leadership for the last 15 years.
Yeah, it's a political vision of the world that says that a form of degrowth is desirable, effectively. And at the same time...
We used to call that communism.
Well, frankly, it is. But at the same time right now, America has energy abundance. It's finding ways of improving other, renewable energy forces, be it nuclear, be it geothermal, all sorts of things. They're doubling down on this technology. The Chinese, whatever you think of them, are doing the same thing because they see these overheads coming. It is only us, not just in Britain, in parts across Europe as well, where we have this attitude, which is almost like, well, we've reached peak civilization because we have coffees. And
our children are not going to be better off than us. That's not... No, I want my kids to be better off than me. It is insane that this bloc, of which we have, even though we voted to leave it, we remain very much culturally, I believe, politically, part of it. Our leaders have not left. They are of the same mindset that we are looking at the rest of the world, and we're seeing other countries storm ahead of us. And our attitude is, we need to regulate. We need to slow this down, buddy. Change. Oh, I don't like the sound of that. All of this sounds and you do know that oil and gas, it explodes, don't you know? It's quite dangerous. And what we actually need is a nice, really consistent way of living that just means nothing ever changes, and we can maintain control over it. Oh, but by the way, let's open up the borders and import millions of people because we're not having enough children. Well, let's come to that. We're going to talk about that in just a couple of moments with Toby Young, Lord Young, from the Free Speech Union. But the government today, it was leaked to Tim Shipman at The Spectator at the end of last week. They're going to publish their new Cohesion strategy, protecting what matters. And it's being published today. It includes setting up a role for an anti-Muslim hostility czar.
Out of curiosity, is he therefore in charge of all the anti-Muslims, or is he against it? Because I think the framing of this is actually rather poor.
It's very difficult to keep up, isn't it? But we're talking about basically it's a 47-page document, and it wants that anti-Semitism is becoming normalised in the UK,
really,
as well as anti-Muslim attitudes. But also it's accused right-wing groups of using the Union flag and the cross of St George as tools of hate. I don't think flying a national flag is a tool of hate unless you're doing it to people who really shouldn't be here, frankly, because if you've got a problem with the flag, you shouldn't live in the country. Thank you very much. But he says, for many people, they say, Britain's historic social cohesion that has kept us united in the face of adversity is now under threat. For many people living in the UK, the changes brought about by mass migration have been too much, too quickly. This is a fascinating bit, leaving people feeling as though they are losing their local and national identity. But they're not feeling it.
It's happening.
It's actually happening. They say,
in fact,
integration, they say, is a two-way street, calling for respect for different cultures, but newcomers have a responsibility to engage with and embrace what it means to be British. No,
it's not
a two-way street.
Yeah.
No,
that's putting the blame on us. That's what that's doing. It's telling us.
And it's not like, you eat, I don't know, you eat spicy food, or someone eats fish and chips, or you're from France and you like snails. I can respect that, that's fine. I don't have to respect all of other people's cultures. If your culture means that women are second-class citizens or have to cover their faces, or that gay people get killed,
or that Jews are evil,
or that Jews are... No, I don't respect your culture. No, sorry.
Honestly, the way that this is framed, and of course you can see that it's downstream of the idea of multiculturalism, this idea that actually all cultures are kind of equal. Every sane person understands that's half of the reason people move to countries like this, because their culture is not the same. What is insane is that when they get here, then they're told, oh, well, you don't really have to assimilate, so they they don't assimilate.
You can live exactly as you want, but take all the benefits that this country's culture brings.
No other serious country does this. A couple in the West have decided this is a good thing. Look at what it's doing to France right now. Look at what it's doing to Germany right now. This country that had this pathological, well, we can't go down the route of extremism. Oh, good Lord, the AfD, where did that come from? Oh, that's right, it's because we decided to denigrate our culture. Yep. Go to places like Japan, it doesn't happen. China doesn't allow it to happen. Nope. This is the reality. Most countries do not just go, come on in and do what you want.
European countries aren't allowing it to happen.
Absolutely not. Poland isn't. The Czechs aren't allowing it to happen.
Nope.
Most countries understand that's how your civilization ends up in trouble.
Yeah.
It's just us that have forgotten this somehow.
Well, no, just our leadership. The British people haven't forgotten it. It's just our insane sort of lanyard class.
I don't know. There's a lot of Greek people vote Green. A lot of people still vote Labour, and they think that way. Yeah. That's what concerns me. A lot of people still think this way.
Well, you know, we're going to talk about the Greens a bit later. Good luck with that, I say. Anyway, 11:18 is time. I want to hear your thoughts on this. 0344 499 1000. Text us on 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. As I say, calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. We're going to get to your calls just after about 11:30. Up next, we're going to be talking to the Conservative peer, founder of the Free Speech Union, Lord Toby Young, about that new anti-Muslim hate czar, and plenty more besides. This is Talk.
We genuinely are on resignation watch. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Labour MPs, they say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson, who faces a criminal investigation.
Can Keir Starmer survive the Mandelson scandal? We have breaking news for you. We've just been talking about, of course, Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff. We've now had another resignation from number 10. And Keir Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, has now also resigned. The plot is thickening. The noose is tightening.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. It's 11:21. Let's go straight to my next guest. Lord Young is a Conservative peer. He's also founder of the Free Speech Union. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. Let's talk. Look, there's an awful lot going on in the world, and interesting that a long-awaited document, a leaked draft has already come out of it, of a strategy basically tackling social cohesion. I think virtually every government we've ever had has done one of these documents looking into how we could tackle social cohesion in this country. And it's going to be, we're told, published today, and it's going to say that Islamist extremism is the biggest threat to community cohesion, although it's also going to talk about anti-Semitism becoming normalised in our country, and is going to create an anti-Muslim hostility czar as part of this new strategy to be unveiled this week. Tell us what you make of what we know so far about that strategy.
Well, my initial reaction, Julia, is that if the government genuinely believes that the greatest threat to social cohesion is Islamic extremism, why is it in the next breath announcing the creation of an anti-Muslim hostility czar? Won't the government itself be accused of anti-Muslim hostility by flagging Islamic extremism as the greatest threat to social cohesion? It doesn't sound like we need to define anti-Muslim hostility, roll it out across public bodies, appoint someone to enforce this new speech code, because that will inhibit people from calling out Islamic extremism. So it doesn't seem like a particularly coherent, well thought out strategy. It seems like they're trying to be all things to all men.
That's so unlike Keir Starmer. It's quite out of character. The thing is, though, there is a difference. I know there are a lot of people who don't ascribe to this, but there is a difference between someone who is Muslim and someone who is an Islamist. There are hundreds of millions, million plus Muslims living around the world who don't pose a threat to anybody, who don't blow up cars, blow up children at concerts, don't drive into people, don't have any evil intention to anybody at all. We do need to separate those two things, and it isn't appropriate, it isn't acceptable in our society that someone who is clearly Muslim by appearance, a woman wearing a headscarf, etc., should be targeted for hostility for having a religion where there are also extremists of that religion who are terrorists. That's a reasonable point to make, isn't it?
It is a reasonable point to make. My concern is that many of the people involved, in fact, all of the people involved in the working group that has come up with this definition of anti-Muslim hostility, do have links to Islamist organisations and Islamist figures. So the concern is that it will be used. This definition will be used, and whoever's appointed to enforce it will use it to suppress criticism of Islamist extremism. That distinction won't be preserved when it comes to the enforcement of this new speech code, which the government has said it wants to roll out across workplaces, particularly in the public sector. So anyone, drawing attention to the dubious history of the Muslim Council of Great Britain, for instance, is likely to be hauled over the coals for anti-Muslim hostility, even if they're drawing attention to links with some pretty dodgy Islamist organisations and figures.
And we've already seen over the years, have we not? I mean, basically for best part of a decade, people were sort of clamped down on, in the most outrageous, censorious fashion for pointing out the grooming gangs that were happening in Rochdale, Rotherham and some 50 other cities and towns across the country were predominantly these crimes were being perpetrated by men of Muslim Pakistani heritage. That itself, to state that fact, even when you saw case after case come to court, and it was clearly obvious from the names and from the information we had about these criminals that this was the case, that was considered to be Islamophobic, it was considered to be racist. We know Manchester Arena attack was able to go ahead because the security guard didn't want to tackle Salman Abedi because he had a rucksack. He was a Muslim appearance man with a rucksack, and he just thought he'd probably be accused of being a racist. So we've already got that issue. Is it better, though, that we do have a proper definition? There's been talk about having a proper definition of whatever Islamophobia is, but now they're saying it's going to be anti-Muslim hatred. Is that going to help in any way, or do you think that is just going to hinder?
I can't see it helping, Julia. I mean, I think one of the reasons that some communities are divided, we see community tensions on the rise in cities like Leicester, for instance, is precisely because the feeling has sprung up that Muslims are a protected group. Yeah. That you're likely to get into more trouble in the workplace with the police if you're critical of Muslims, if you draw attention to the overrepresentation of Muslim men in grooming gangs, for instance. Those things are much more likely to get you into trouble than if you attack Hindus or Jews. And I think this idea that Muslims need this special protection, that the government needs to roll out this definition to protect one particular community and not others, is likely to exacerbate community tensions, not reduce them. I think that the broader point about this strategy that the government is going to unveil later today, Julia, is that, we've heard a lot of talk about countering Islamist extremism in the past. That was one of the purposes of the Prevent strategy, Tony Blair's version of this. And yet we've seen in the implementation of these strategies that people on the far right, people who say they're going to vote reform, people who air their concerns about the small boats, are much more likely to be referred to Prevent than Islamists, than people who go on pro-Palestinian marches and chant from the river to the sea or globalise the Intifada. It's the kind of two-tier way in which these strategies are that I think we should be concerned about.
And again, and it's not a feeling that people have. This is all real. This is actually happening. It's playing out. The statistics are very clear. We see the stories. But it is very interesting, one of the points made in this document. And again, goodness me, I mean, I think, was it Louise Casey did a report for David Cameron. We've had other reports. I mean, this is done, as I say, by every Prime Minister. And they talk about, this is where it says that Britain's historic social cohesion that has kept us united in the face of adversity is now, they say, under threat in this document. For many living in the UK, the changes brought about by mass migration have been too much, too quickly, leaving people feeling as though they are losing their local and national identity. As Benedict and I have just been discussing, I don't think they're feeling it. I mean, it's actually happening. But it also says that integration is a two-way street, and says it's calling for respect for different cultures, but also that newcomers have a responsibility to engage with and embrace what it means to be British. I mean, should it be a two-way street when people come to this country in terms of their culture versus or integrating with our existing culture? And what responsibility do we have to newcomers?
Yeah, well, I think that is problematic, and you can see that the government wanting to be even-handed is actually going to mean that indigenous Britons will be forced to accommodate and make allowances for new arrivals, but the opposite won't be true. I think I suppose it's a source of some optimism that the government is acknowledging finally that multiculturalism hasn't been, an unalloyed success story, that diversity isn't just a strength, that the degree of immigration that's happened in the last 10 or so years has given rise to community tensions, and we need to start addressing them. That's all to the good. But I think the government's underlying assumption is that the way to manage those tensions is to restrict what people can say. To refer them to counter-extremism programs if they air their concerns about untrammeled immigration, about the small boats and so forth. This is generally the government's approach, that the only problem we have with multiculturalism is people venting too much, particularly people on the right. And if only people would shut up and stifle their misgivings, then we'd all live happily ever after.
The problem is us saying it out loud rather than thinking it, or it actually happening. And that's interesting, because the appointee of this special representative on anti-Muslim hostility, the Tsar for shorthand, will champion efforts across the UK to tackle hostility and hatred directed at Muslims and those perceived to be Muslim. And the appointee is expected to engage with communities and stakeholders. And again, we had engagement from the Birmingham police, didn't we? West Midlands police, with the community and stakeholders in Birmingham ahead of that Aston Villa Maccabi Tel Aviv match, didn't we? And those stakeholders and communities, again, self-appointed leaders, often the same people who, as you say, they'll be the same people who've been part of this this body advising on this this strategy. They'll be the same people who, tell the police, oh, we don't want a lot of Jews in our city from Israel because we don't, we're going to cause trouble if you do, which is basically what they were telling the police back last November. The problem we do have, is it not, that we talk about community leaders for Muslims. We don't have community leaders for, white, or I'd say black, or Asian, British-born people who don't have a religion. We don't have any engagement. No one comes to talk to me as a representative of white middle-class women who are atheists. Who are these people? Why do they have to be engaged with? And who made them leaders of this so-called community?
Yeah, I think that is a problem. We saw it in Birmingham with the banning of Maccabi Tel Aviv fans at the behest of community leaders and community groups. I mean, part of the problem is you're not gonna tackle threats to social cohesion, and in particular, you're not going to tackle the threat posed by Islamic extremism if you engage with people who are themselves Islamic extremists and prioritize them as stakeholders and invite them to meetings with the police. I mean, we've seen numerous examples of this. The sorts of people that appoint themselves community leaders within Muslim communities in cities like Birmingham end up, they're part of the problem. That they shouldn't be part of the solution.
Just finally, I mean, when we talk about anti-Semitism, which we know actually, per head of the population who is Jewish in this country, is a far bigger crisis in this country than the head of the population of Muslims in the country. It's a much, much bigger Muslim population than Jewish population. Any attack on anyone because of their religion is totally unacceptable in our modern democracy. I'm sure you and all my audience would agree. Do you think, though, that ordinary Muslims who have, or totally, living in this country peacefully, they're not, not supporting Iran or Hamas or going on marches, just doing exactly the same as all non-Muslim, going to taking their kids to schools, going to work, going to the supermarket, worrying about the price of filling up the car, or do they need to speak up more when there are people claiming to represent them, who are stirring up community tensions, who are stirring up hostility, who are demanding that the British majority adapt to their culture, their beliefs and their concerns? Do you think that actually there's a lot more that ordinary Muslims in this country could do to speak up and say, no, not in our name, stop pretending you represent us, you don't?
Absolutely. And I think one of the ongoing problems we have with Islamic extremism is the policing within Muslim communities of dissent by extremists, labeling them as siding with the enemy, as being disloyal, as betraying their communities. And that creates a kind of culture of omerta within these communities. And my concern is that if we do roll out a definition of anti-Muslim hostility and appoint someone to enforce it who doesn't have the interests of these moderate groups at heart, we'll just end up seeing that definition used to silence moderate voices within those communities.
Do you think, finally, that the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood should ban the annual Al-Quds March? It's a rally linked to Tehran after pro-Iranian protesters made anti-Semitic comments and carried placards supporting the Supreme Leader in recent marches. Should that march be banned?
I don't think the march should be banned. I'm in favour of free speech. I don't want to see anyone forcibly silenced. I do think that there are too many of these protests, that they are incredibly disruptive, that they are very intimidating, particularly to Jews. And I would like to see fewer of them, and I'd like to see them taking place in confined areas, but I'm not in favour of banning them altogether.
Okay. Lord Toby Young, always good to talk to you, get your thoughts. Conservative peer, founder of the Free Speech Union. Thank you for that. But Lady Expense, your response to what he had to say?
I mean, just on that point, I am increasingly of the opinion that we should be banning these sorts of marches. I just don't think that when we're talking about sort of free expression in this country, which we don't have, why is it that we're allowing sort of marches which, again, as you say, are being promoted by a hostile foreign power with a hostile
you wouldn't
ideology?
Have a pro-Hitler march
exactly.
during the Second World War, would you? I mean, it wouldn't be allowed.
You wouldn't have a pro-Russia
This country
march.
is at war with us.
Yeah,
I mean, we're the little Satan.
If we had a pro-Russia march, say, you don't even have to take the Nazi example, pro-Russia calling for the death to Zelensky and the Ukrainians and all that sort of thing, that wouldn't be allowed either.
I think it would be allowed.
I don't think it would.
I'm kind of with Toby Young. I mean, I'm not as much for free speech absolutist as he is, but I mean, I'm a member of the Free Speech Union and feel very strongly about it. But I'm thinking, again, it's like the same. The marches, the pro-Palestinian, they ended up being pro-Hamas marches. That's what they are. And anyway, they organised the first one the day that the massacre was still taking place. It was long before there was any military action by Israel. So we know, they showed their true colours on, on October the 7th. I'm going to say. But I just want these things policed properly. And again, I want them, no, you can't, no, you don't get to march through central London every other week, disturbing everybody going about their daily business. You have a right to your freedom of speech, but you can do it, in a Hyde Park or something. You can do it somewhere else. We can move the disruption elsewhere. It doesn't have to go past the synagogue, etc. But I do think they need to be policed properly. And if you are holding up anti-Semitic measures, if you are holding up support for a guy who has threatened death to the British people, no, I don't think you should be allowed to.
The government of this country has made it clear over and over again that in fact we do not have free speech, and it is not interested in giving everybody free speech.
Yeah.
If that is the case, why is it that we should allow people to move to this country, import their own ideological crusade, which involves the destruction of this country's administration? Why should that be allowed? It's not British, it's not civilised.
It's
I'm not
national. It's a national act of suicide. Is what it is. 11:37 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to get to your messages. Lots of you getting in touch, in particular about Donald Trump saying that world oil prices surging is a small price to pay for defeating the threat from Iran. Do you agree or not? 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. 11:39 is the time here on Talk. Let's get straight to your calls. Glyn is on the line in Nottingham. Glyn, is it a small price to pay for having surging energy prices that will impact everything we pay for in this country to defeat Iran?
Well, looking at it this way, if you don't do it now, when do you do it? And if you wait until they've got the bomb or whatever, how do you stop them then?
Well, that would be my argument, which is the whole, people go, well, we can just avoid it. We'll just keep our heads in the sand. They were trying to build a bomb. They're going to build a bomb. When they've got a bomb, they're going to use it in the Middle East, either against Israel or against us or America. At some point, as a nuclear bomb in the Middle East is going to be rather more of a problem for our energy price spikes than what's going on now, isn't it?
Well, that's right. I mean, if they get the bomb and then they suddenly say, right, you're all paying this much, or we're going to closing those straits and whatnot, what can you do about it?
Yep.
Absolutely nothing.
And then we learned that with North Korea. We should never have let North Korea get that bomb.
No. Well, Iran would have no compunction in flattening Britain, America, anywhere that just disagrees with it.
No.
It just doesn't care.
I couldn't agree with you more. Do you think that Keir Starmer has handled this well?
No, he's totally inept and he's out of his depth. He's a puppet with the strings going to Herma and to Miliband.
Yeah.
But to say that, the country's been going down the pan now for a lot of years, but he's put it on steroids. When I first got a passport, I had one, you might not be old enough for it, I had one of the old blue ones.
Oh, I'm old enough.
And when I went abroad with that, you felt that you wouldn't be messed with. People looked at it and they had respect for it. Now you're fair game. I mean, and all the arrangements that he's been making, I'm sure it was on Talk Radio, an ex-head of the armed forces, who said that when all this blew up, the government would have been told by the armed forces to get one of these ships down there, PDQ. And it must have been a political decision not to. He said it would be totally wrong if the armed forces hadn't given that advice.
Yeah, I mean, we probably won't find out for a long time either way. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's inconceivable the military hadn't gone, listen, guys, and again, it's just a whole, I just don't want to deal with it. I don't want to get involved. I'm just sort of, I don't want to make a decision about anything because it'll be the wrong decision. Do you think that is, when you talk about, we're no longer probably respected in the world, or certainly feared. I mean, I'm in favour of both of those, frankly. Do you think that we've damaged our relationship with the American people? I mean, there may have been a blip in the relationship between Trump and Starmer, but do you think we've actually damaged our relationship with America?
I think we have with most of them. Certainly the ones that are backing Trump won't like what Starmer's doing. And he didn't even have to join the attacks. All he had to do was allow them to. But he's been going around all his Muslim friends. He's more worried about the Muslim vote and his backbenchers than he is about what's best for the country. And
I agree.
He really doesn't care about much else.
I absolutely agree. I really do. And I think that's, again, people say, so we don't bring sort of sectarian sort of politics into our country. Yeah, we've already got that. Glenn, thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Simon, who's in Basingstoke. Hi, Simon, what do you want to say?
Well, hi, Julia. I mean, I think your previous call was right on the button. I think we've had irresponsible governments for the last 26 years, probably longer. If we'd have spent the 0.7% we were spending on overseas aid on our military, none of this would be an issue. But the particular point I wanted to talk to you about was energy. When Theresa May shut down the Rough facility, that was a gas storage facility that contained 9 days of gas supply for the UK. Now we're down to 1.5 to 2 days. And we're completely reliant on liquid natural gas tankers and supplies from Norway. And there's roughly 100 liquefied natural gas tankers stuck in the Gulf now. So instead of spending £8 billion on carbon capture, let's have a strategic gas reserve of 90 days, and let's start building nuclear power stations as quickly as we can.
That's the only thing I do agree with on the energy policy for Labour is they were actually going to, well, they say they're going to build all these sort of mini nuclear reactors. I mean, but they take years to build, and if and when, that would be great. But this has been a problem. Again, Theresa May gets away with this too much. She made so many bad decisions in that short time she was in office.
Well, I think it's about time we held politicians to account for this. I think we need to reinstate a treason law and say, well, you made this decision. Who was that awful guy who was part of the coalition who then went off to work for one of the big tech giants, the Lib Dem leader?
Nick Clegg.
Yes, who said, "Oh well, let's not build nuclear reactors because they won't be built soon enough to make."
He said, he actually said, didn't he? It was about 2010, 2011. Come on, there's no point building a nuclear power plant. It wouldn't be online until 2022, which was right when we had that massive energy spike. I mean, the lack of long-term thinking in this government, and the last one, and the one before, and the one before, and the one before that, is terrifying. Because especially when we're told we've got this first-class civil service who was supposed to be giving all this advice behind the scenes. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Two great calls there. Simon, thank you very much indeed for that. Benedict?
Two things that I want to say to slightly push back on this. Whilst, yes, the politicians are appalling, let's be clear, a lot of things don't get it done in this country because of planning laws, and that means ordinary people being able to oppose certain things.
But the government makes the planning laws.
They do, but let's again be clear, it's not entirely the government. No. You get the country that you deserve, and there'll be lots of people listening saying that's nothing to do with me, but enough people do make silly decisions. I'm from a part of the world where they were trying to build a new nuclear reactor, and that many people were going, no, absolutely not. And the other thing is, you can put more money into the MOD. It would be a good idea. The MOD is really, really bad at spending it. Absolutely. A bit like the NHS, it's just an endless pit of money because they buy bad things, because they have arrangements with certain companies, and there is a go and to between. People leave the military, they go and work for those companies. It's very cushy. It needs to be ripped up and started again.
I wouldn't trust them to actually do the procurement. Absolutely not. By the way, also the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, she's been speaking in the last half hour. She said that Keir Starmer has been, her words, too slow to recognise what was coming down the line, too slow to let the US use our airbase, and too slow to protect our troops in Bahrain and in Cyprus. I mean, what's to disagree with that? Oh, just to let you know, everything's fine because the G7 finance ministers are going to meet after the oil price surge, so everything's going to be fine. There's absolutely nothing they can do about it, but there we are. Right now, here's something you can do something about. We are giving you the chance to win 2 hospitality tickets to the British Grand Prix on Sunday, the 5th of July. That's with the full Racing Green trackside experience. Is my husband allowed to apply for this? He would so be up for this. This is the ultimate setup for race day. You'll get exclusive grandstand seats at the Loop and Village Corners, plus inner track access to watch the drivers arriving at the paddock, and access to the hospitality shuttle bus for easy on-site transport, racing simulators and live music between sessions, all-day street food and an open bar. So listen up to find out how you could be with a chance to win.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 20th of March 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
It is the perfect Silverstone race day experience for any F1 fan, so don't miss out. 11:47 is the time. Let's take a quick break. Up next, we are going to be talking about the moment that the new Green Party MP, Hannah Spencer, was forced to take, refuge in a police car after anti-trans protesters, tackled her. But who was in the wrong? We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:50 is the time. Let's talk right now to Sex Matters Director of Campaigns, that is Fiona McEnena, who joins us to talk about, well, a little event yesterday with the new Green Party MP, Hannah Spencer, in Manchester. A very good good morning to you, Fiona.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Now, a lot of people would have seen this in the news, and it's a moment where the Green Party MP, just newly elected only a week ago for Gordon and Denton, she had to be escorted by police through Manchester city centre after a brawl erupted at an event. She was speaking at an event which is Greater Manchester's Together Alliance, a group apparently against the far right. They're obsessed with the far right, aren't they, the Green Party? They're happy to hang out with the far right when it comes to Islamist extremists, but there we are. But there was an anti-transgender protesters present, I would say pro-women protesters present, and it all turned a little bit nasty. Let's have a little watch and a listen to what happened.
Can a woman have a penis, Hannah? Hannah, can a woman have a penis? Are trans women men?
Men give birth.
Hey? Can a woman have a penis, Hannah? What are you doing, mate? Are you trying to push me? So, Hannah, can a woman have a penis or what? Scabby traitor. Yeah, look at this guy here. That's assault.
Well, all this happened. It's all a bit confused. There's various different videos, but all a bit confused. But this all happened, of course, on International Women's Day, Fiona, where we've seen again and again an extraordinary amount of times when we see men who claim to be trans women, but they're just trans-identifying men, seem to rather take over that event that's supposed to be for women. But what did you make of these protesters? I mean, some would say harassing Hannah Spencer. Others would say asking completely legitimate questions of someone who says that, you know, trans women are women. What do you make of it all?
Well, it's become a real hot topic, hasn't it? And of course, as you say, anytime there's anything for women, then that has to be about trans women, or else the men get upset. I saw other footage of that protest where there were indeed tall men, obviously trying to present as women, harassing that chap that we just heard from, who had the billboard saying trans women are men. So he's asking an MP to answer that awkward question, and she doesn't want to do it. I'm sure it was unnerving for her, but she really should have an answer by now. But of course, we all know what the Green Party's answer is. They say that, you know, trans women are the best and most important women. And
yes, they're not just women. They're better than women.
Yeah, because you can't have an International Women's Day without celebrating the trans women. I mean, they're not the only ones. We've also seen Labour MP Stella Creasy do the same thing. So it's just that anytime you say women, it's all, you know, trans jums in.
I mean, but it's interesting that this wasn't. I mean, this wasn't what was going on in the event she went to. Was not an event on International Women's Day, but she is a publicly, you know, she's a public figure. She's elected as an MP. Now, if she was, you know, popping out from her home to go to the shops or on her way to the tube station outside Westminster on her own, I would object to this. I would say, look, no, you can't be shouting at somebody going about their private business, and certainly a bunch of men surrounding a woman. And that doesn't make me feel comfortable at all. A lot of people have pointed that out, and the Greens are really playing that part. But she was there at a public event as a publicly democratically elected MP. She was being asked perfectly politely, perfectly legitimate questions, and those lots of people obviously are listening, can't see the video, by men with billboards. And you say, what are the billboards? I mean, it says there's no such thing as a transgender child. I mean, because there isn't. I don't consider that to be a statement of hate or transphobia. I consider that to be a statement of fact, and a statement in support of healthy children not being given drugs and surgery and God knows what to damage them for life. I would say that's a rather loving thing to have written on a billboard. But it did appear to me that when we got a statement from the Green Party, they said the incident was caused by a few angry men who had attempted to spread anti-trans bigotry, saying Hannah was talking today in Manchester about community cohesion and unity. A few angry men chose this moment to try and silence and harass Hannah on International Women's Day. But it seemed to me that from the videos I've seen, the only violence was actually, or the attempt, the harassment was actually from the other side against the men with billboards. But it's difficult to know from just short video clips, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think that asking an MP a question is not silencing her.
Exactly.
It's asking her to back up a policy that the Green Party have made much of, and that they know is controversial and they know is unpopular, very widely unpopular. So really, she's newly elected. It's tough to find herself in this situation. She had lots of security and police around her. I'm sure it was distressing, but she really should be able to answer that question. And she was determined not to. And so it's very disingenuous of the party to say that that was an attempt to silence her. On the contrary, it was an attempt to get her to defend a policy that she herself has advocated for, and the rest of us want to hear how on earth the Green Party think it's okay to say that men are women.
Yeah, well, indeed, I find it extraordinary that police were unable to actually sort of deal with this properly. I would say in any scenario where people are getting to violent blows over this issue, unacceptable. But it's interesting. I'd love to hear the Green Party view on, you know, Kelly J. Keane and many others who go out, you know, every single day, you know, every Sunday, and there are places like Hyde Park Corner and elsewhere where they are being outrageously threatened and intimidated by pro-trans campaigners, often, you know, 6 foot plus men intimidating women and trying to shut them up. I haven't heard the Greens say anything about that.
No, and they are being silenced. I mean, there was an International Women's Day event in Nottingham that Kelly J. Keane went to, and she was thrown out of that for asking questions about single-sex spaces. So she was being silenced. Hannah Spencer was being asked to justify her party's position. She wants to play the victim. Well, that's not a great start to her parliamentary career, is it?
No, absolutely not. I feel it's only going to go one way. But let's talk about something, again, we keep hearing little moments of good news that we can get hopeful about. The NHS England has paused all new prescriptions for cross-sex hormones to 16 and 17-year-olds after review found previous research into how harmful or beneficial the drugs may be was really weak. Yeah, because we've never had proper research into these things. Now, these are drugs that have been banned for under 16s, apart from this awful trial that's currently being paused, and we hope we'll never be able to get the go-ahead. But the NHS has continued to give prescriptions to 16 and 17-year-olds. 18, people are adults. Personally, I don't think anyone should be getting these things, but on the NHS. But they're now saying they won't allow any new prescriptions to be given to new patients who are 16 or 17. This is another small victory in this war, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's dangerous for anyone to take cross-sex hormones. In fact, it's dangerous for anyone to take testosterone in large doses, male or female. But it's disastrous for women. We know about that from the doping in sport, from behind the Iron Curtain, how damaged all those women were. And this was our health service letting unhappy 16 and 17-year-old girls who think they can become men take testosterone in large doses, larger than the doses that were used in doping athletes, because the athletes didn't really want to be caught.
Yeah.
But these girls are quite happy, and their doctors were telling them it was fine. Clearly, that's not a safe or responsible approach. So this is, as you say, a glimmer of hope. It's a little bit of common sense. There was never any evidence to say this is a great idea. At least it's been paused for new patients. But there are a lot of people out there who really need help with how they're feeling about themselves, not to be told that they can just change sex by taking drugs.
Because you can't, indeed. And we see so many young people that's happened to who are now saying, like, whoa, what did they do to me? And again, we know a lot of the people who offer these drugs, they're gay. They've got autistic, they've been sexually abused, they've got many other issues, depression and anxiety, and this is absolutely not the solution. Bearing in mind, we know this now, this is the launch of a consultation, I think it's a 100-day consultation period on longer-term guidance over use of the treatment. I strongly say to people, I'll get the link and hopefully get it from you, you can help me with this. Let's just make sure as many people respond to this and make their voices heard, because my God, the pro-trans activists are all over this, and we need to make sure that ordinary people who've got more common sense actually have their say. Fiona McInerney, thank you as always for joining us from Sex Matters. Thank you for that. Benedict Spence, just really briefly, Hannah Spencer.
Honestly, the fact that elected MPs are doing this whole sort of charade of going, I'm the one that's being harassed for having views which are incredibly against what the majority of people actually want.
No, but also deeply dangerous.
This is the thing. The fact that we still are in this position, how many years after this sort of first erupted into the mainstream, that gives you an idea of how broken our political discourse is. That people still take this seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't like and playing the victim. Again, if she was on a private outing, I'd feel very, very differently about it. You're in a public situation like that, you have to answer questions, loves. That's how it works. Up next, Ian Duncan Smith on Iran. This is Talk.
UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon to you. This is Talk with the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer, your new Supreme Leader, Britain. Hey, if Iran can have one, so can we. Whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it's great to have your company. I just hope as Supreme Leader of Britain I last a bit longer than the last couple of Iran. We'll see how long the next one lasts. But if you do miss anything from the show, don't forget you can go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe so you never have to miss a thing. We've had some stonking guests and discussions already in the last couple of hours and plenty more to come in the next hour. We're also going to be discussing, of course, the latest on the US and Israel's war on Iran. Keir Starmer scrambling to save the special relationship. Is it still there? In this phone call with Donald Trump, reassuring us about energy prices, and also going to be talking about ministers admitting that Keir Starmer's Brexit reset will hammer thousands of businesses with yet more red tape. Oh, what a surprise. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all the topics we're talking about today. In particular, Donald Trump saying that surging world oil prices are a small price to pay for defeating the threat from Iran. What's your reaction to that? 0344 499 1000 is a number to call. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged the national rate and text costs £1 standard network rate a message. But of course, I mean, a lot of you are pointing out, and a lot of you on text and Twitter saying, you know, it's all right for Donald Trump. He's not going to be worried about energy prices going up a little bit. He's got quite a lot of money in the bank. An awful lot of other people will be concerned. To actually say, joining me for this next hour, as he has been for the whole show, is Conservative commentator Benedict Spence. Do you think, finally, Benedict, look, just before we go to our next guest, that actually, when we've been talking all morning about this, you know, small price to pay, that actually, you know, it might be something that actually is the case for the West, for Britain, for America, for Israel, for allies, but actually it's not a price that many Brits will want to pay after going through, let's face it, a pretty rotten time in the recent years.
Yeah, Britain and Europe more broadly are going to really feel the brunt of this, and we've already been teetering on the edge in some countries about the direction of politics and where it can go to the extremes in either direction. And I do wonder about that. I do wonder about what the future is, and also for a couple of other Middle Eastern countries that are going to be disproportionately affected by this. Egypt is one that I think everybody's looking at. They better hope that this works, is all that I'm saying, because actually, if after all of this, we've had the price spikes, we've had the crises, and the regime is still there, and it's even more irritated, and it's taking out more people in its own streets and activating cells across the world.
What have we gained?
Ooh, I don't know how that's going to go down. It's a good thing that Donald Trump can't stand for election again, although he might have views on that.
Yeah, very interesting point, Benedict Spence. Thank you very much. Love to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Let's go straight to my first guest of this hour. They're delighted to welcome former Conservative Party leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, MP, to the show. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Morning, Supreme Leader.
Seriously, do you not think that it suits me though, right?
I've always thought it for decades now, but you know.
What do you? I mean, let's start with that. Let's start with the new Supreme Leader of Iran, the dead Ayatollah Khamenei's son, Mojtaba Khamenei, has now been named the new Supreme Leader. Donald Trump has already said, that's not going to be acceptable to me. A lot of talk about how, you know, he was part of the crackdown with the IRGC of those protests in January, you know, literally machine gunning young, you know, teenagers and people in their 20s in the streets just for demanding some basic normal life and freedoms. Have things just got better or worse with his appointment?
Well, I don't think there's any change. I think the key thing is to know that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps are running all of this at the moment. They are the power, not even the Iranian army as such. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps are the ones that were killing the protesters, the plus 30,000 that have died and been seriously injured. That was all done by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC.
Well, it's actually interesting. It's the Islamic Revolution. That's the thing. They are the full-on lunatics.
Yes, I beg your pardon. I should have said Islamic. You're right. But the main problem here is that they are in charge. And you can see when the president the other day, the elected president, said that he apologized to Qatar and all the other countries and said, we won't be striking any of you with any missiles or drones. Even as he was speaking, there were drones landing there, and it's carried on. And that's because he's not the IRGC, and therefore they control it. And right now, that is what is going on. That is what has to, to have this as a success, the IRGC has to be broken. It's as simple as that. Otherwise, they'll just resurrect themselves in due course. And so that really is the specific target for
That's
Israeli
the number one issue. So what does successful victory look like? Whether for, I mean, this is the thing, the difference between the aims of the US, brackets the rest of the West who've joined in, we'll come to that in a moment, Israel, they're facing a rather more existential threat from Iran in terms of the immediacy, but also the Iranian people. What does success
Well, it started originally as we're going to stop them getting nuclear weapons and stop them using ballistic weapons, which is fine. I think it's widened beyond that now. And as I said earlier on, I think the key for the US to be able to judge this as successful is to have broken the IRGC. In other words, make it impossible for them to continue launching their missiles or even terrorizing people in Iran. And then, if that's the case, then change may come organically from within, but they are the blockers to all of that, and they are the people that are continuing this war. So if if President Trump wants to have a success lotched up on this, it has to be that he's broken the IRGC, which, by the way, we still have not prescribed here in the UK. After all of this, years of this, we still haven't prescribed them, which means you can operate legally in the UK, going around stirring up vile hatred.
And even after the bombing of our base in Cyprus.
Even after the attacks on our allies and our own base, we are still not putting legislation forward yet to prescribe them. And I've been calling it for years, so many others. And no matter who's in power, it seems that the Foreign Office has control over this, and they don't want to do it because they think they lose influence. They have no influence in Iran. When did they have any influence in Iran, for God's sake? Look, let's get on and prescribe them, and that way we will strike back at Iran because they get so much of their support from the UK.
Yeah, indeed. Well, you talk about us having no influence in Iran. How much influence, Tehran in particular, how much influence do we have in the US? What do you make of Keir Starmer's, I mean, blatant sort of dithering, shall we, shan't we, influence we're told by other members of his cabinet in terms of whether we join this sort of an alliance with the US or allow the use of our base at Diego Garcia? Again, that comes up in the news an awful lot, doesn't it, that base? In every single story we talk about for the US to use for those attacks. What do you make of our standing in the world and our standing with our most important security, defence and economic ally in the White House?
Well, the first thing I would say is that whether or not you agree with that he said they couldn't use the bases, let's take a pace back for a second. We've known about this potential strike for what, 9 weeks or more? America, Israel have been talking it up all the time, moving assets into the area. So there was always a very good likelihood that something would happen. In that period, why in hell's name did we not move significant assets in and around Cyprus and into the Gulf? Why didn't we move to protect our allies and, more importantly, Cyprus, which is an ally, but also where our sovereign territory is? All of that. Instead of which, we make a decision not to let them use the bases. That doesn't stop us getting struck, by the way, which happened to the sovereign bases, but at the same time, many of our allies getting struck. But we have very little capacity to do anything about it. So now what we've succeeded in doing, as he switches over to let the US do it, is actually anything he's achieved is to be hated by most of our allies who feel that they've been let down by us and by Cyprus, who now wants to get rid of the sovereign bases. Look out for that one, because that will gain momentum, because when push came to shove, we simply weren't there. Yeah. That is the single biggest problem that he faces, Starmer, is failure to get right the very beginnings of this. On the decision about being with the Allies or not, we should have let them use the bases, because it's quite obvious that was part of our agreement. Yeah. And if we had said, so having said no and then yes, again, we make it even worse, because now America feels let down by us at the beginning and now not at all comfortable with us as their so-called greatest ally. Now, I think these will settle down in due course. But it was a whole series of bad strategic decision-making, which is the real burden that Starmer will have to carry forward in this.
But again, all of this, I think every single big mess-up internationally we've seen from this government has come down to this, I think, frankly laughable. I mean, you know, sixth form politics view of international law, and this was the argument that, oh, it's wrong because these are aggressive strikes. When Iran has declared war on America, when Iran has, I mean, we've talked about, you know, there's some 20 Iranian-backed attempts of terror attacks in this country alone.
Yes,
and when it sort of doesn't seem to matter what the reality is, the threat to us as, you know, I think we alternate with Israel, whether we're the little Satan or not, well, America's the big Satan. This idea that this is some way an offensive war, when in fact it is a preemptive defensive war against a serious threat to not just the people of Iran, not just the Middle East, as we're seeing right now with weapons raining down on Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, goodness, not just to the Israel, but to the whole world. We've seen the polls that are suggesting that actually the British people are largely not in favour of us getting involved, not in favour of you know, just like a general, you know, not our problem, Gov, someone else's problem. Do you think those people are right, or do you think that people simply don't understand how much of a threat Iran is? And if so, tell us what that threat is.
Well, I think it's partly the latter. I think most of the public have got their own problems, every day-to-day problems. And nobody, even running up to the Second World War, wants to have a war. Of course, I don't want to have a war. Nobody wants to end up in a war where many people may die. However, what they do want is they want to be protected, because defense of the realm is the #1 requirement for any government, no matter what its leanings, left or right. So the question here is really, what do we do to make sure that our public are defended here and abroad? Now, bear in mind how many are now abroad in the area we're targeting by Iran, illegal targeting by Iran, because they were not involved in the strikes at all. All of that is taking place. So the question really we should be talking to the public about is simply this. We don't want a war, but we have to figure out how do we manage to protect those at home, the IRGC, and abroad in these strikes, and looking after our own sovereign territory. So that's what should have been in the mind of the Prime Minister, and which comes me back to all of the stuff I said earlier on. Whatever else you decided about going to, you know, bomb in Iran or not, the key thing was, how do you protect the British public and our British interests? And that seems to have escaped him in this peculiar dance around international law as justification for doing nothing. Doing nothing is not what the British people want. What they need and want is to be defended, and their interest and allies to do the same.
Well, we can't even defend our own aircraft carriers. Apparently the French are having to send a warship to help the deployment of HMS Prince of Wales.
If it could get worse, it just gets worse. When it's really appallingly embarrassing that the UK is taking days and days to get a frigate ready to go to Cyprus after all the attacking has started.
Well, hold on a minute. I agree with you in terms of the dithering we've seen in recent months. But at the end of the day, you know, the lack of warships we have, the lack of military hardware we have, and lack of, you know, manpower. You know, that didn't happen overnight. That didn't start in July 2024. Your lot. I mean, I know you've been speaking out a bit. Your lot have got a lot to take responsibility for there.
Yeah. Well, they started raising defence spending, but quite late in the day.
After cutting it by a third.
Yeah. But my point is, we shouldn't have done. And the reality is, however, whatever else we do have a significant number of ships that are capable in this area. We have some of the most advanced frigates that do air defence, submarine defence, very specific tasks. And the aircraft carrier, I wouldn't be sending that. There's no need for it, frankly. We don't need to have that. But what we do need to put is those air defence and sea defence frigates out into the Mediterranean, which should have gone earlier. And we have them. They're sitting tied up in port. We always had a frigate operating off Bahrain in the Gulf.
And we removed that one as well.
That was withdrawn a few months ago, and it was all withdrawn for one reason. The government is demanding that MOD save about 1.5 billion in this year's budget by the end of this financial year. So they said in a panic, well, let's keep everything back in the UK, do nothing for the next few months until the financial year is over. That is what has caused the problem.
And that's catastrophic. That is absolutely catastrophic, that decision. Well, look, we talk about protecting the British people. Let's also talk about oil and gas bills going up. We woke up, this morning to see, the oil price of a barrel of oil well over $100, biggest spike in prices in about 6 years. We saw, we're in the similar sort of territories where we were when Russia invaded Ukraine. Now the question is how long it's going to last. But the Prime Minister was out and about today at a community centre saying, he wants to, help people. There's talk about there may have to be, as we saw in 22, just sort of some help for people, sort of, basically a guaranteed price. Of course, that all comes out of taxes. We know we're going to see a price rise for not just, travel for us, for gas and oil, but also everything that we buy that has to be transported or made using those fossil fuels. What do you make of that?
Well, the first thing I would say is this, again, and I was arguing this to the previous government, and I'm arguing it to this one. Why haven't we used the oil and gas assets that we have here in the North Sea and actually on the mainland of the UK? And the reality is, our problem is we are always literally the begging bowl out to other people in the Gulf area as a result of this. The second thing about this is, look, I don't know how this is all going to pan out. The Russia crisis was when oil got to about 150, I think it was, thereabouts. Now, we don't want that to happen. If it does happen, we want it to be short, sharp, and then we get it back down again. And that means that this thing can't go on forever or for a very long time, because it will start to impact the well-being of people all over the world, particularly in the free world, for whom President Trump says he's doing this for. So we need to make sure there is some kind of result to this very soon. Otherwise, we will end up in that problem that we had during the Russian invasion, which has lasted, of course, 4 years, which is slightly different.
Well, but Ed Miliband, the Let's All Go Back and Live in Caves and Save the World secretary, his argument is always, well, if we should have more investment in wind and solar and energy and tidal energy, because that would make us more independent. We wouldn't be hit by global gas and oil prices in the same way we are. We wouldn't be reliant, as he always says, on foreign tyrants and dictators. What would you say to that, Sir?
Well, we're already completely reliant on foreign tyrants and dictators. Where do we get most of our oil and gas from?
Well, from America and Norway, actually.
Yeah, well, huge from the Gulf, I have to tell you. Huge amounts come from Bahrain and various other areas, particularly liquid gas. And I have to tell you something else which is important. It's all very well to say we wouldn't be if we had electricity, but actually, the trouble with where we generated on arrays, solar arrays and wind farms is that there's no way of storing that electricity. Yeah. So, it may be really great at 10 o'clock in the morning till about 3 o'clock, but the big bulge in demand comes at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock. We have to meet that with oil and gas. That's the whole point of why we still have oil and gas. And so we have to get oil and gas. And if we have to get oil and gas, why don't we get it from our own resources? In which case, we wouldn't be in hock to the dictators and the unstable states. We would be on our own, being able to do this as we once were. It may not cover everything, but it would certainly do the majority of it. My point is that is a strategic stupidity on his part and on the government's.
Okay, well, let's face it. I mean, Theresa May still has a lot to answer for on that front as well. Let's be honest. And Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson. Let me just ask you just very briefly. Yes or no? King state visit planned to go to America. It was basically a return visit after Trump and Melania came to visit here. Should that go ahead next month?
I think you shouldn't. They shouldn't abandon this visit because of short-term difficulties with the USA over a specific incident like.
But if the war, let's say if this war is still going on and we are involved, should there be a state visit?
In the war, probably we may not be doing these sort of visits because it may be dangerous for His Majesty to go on this. But in principle, my view is this is a hugely important country to us. It's important as an ally. It's important as a trading partner. It's our biggest single trading partner as a country by some distance. So we do need to have good relations. Yes, there's a bit of an upset at the moment about this because of the anger over the failure of the government to at least let them use the bases. But I think across the political spectrum, I was in Washington quite recently, there still is a remarkable level of respect for the UK amongst politicians on the left and the right in the US. Going around talking to them about all this. There may be differences with the present incumbent, but generally the mood is right and they do see us as their best ally, and we need to be capable of being their best ally, which means more defense spending on a very significant scale. But that if that's the case, we should let the king go, because that's what it's all about, really, is the long term.
Right. Just finally, also, just very briefly as well, the Green Party MP, newly elected Gorton and Denton MP, Hannah Spencer, she faced having to be escorted, rushed into a police car by police after angry exchanges between what appeared to be, basically, they were told anti-trans campaigners, but, I would say pro-women campaigners, and people objected to it. It's a bit of, looks like a messy scenario, not entirely clear who started violence, but she was being asked questions. Do you believe that women have a penis? She was on a political trip. She wasn't popping to the shop. She wasn't wasn't in the, in Manchester Piccadilly in a private capacity. Are you concerned about what happened to Hannah Spencer, or is this all just part of democratic life?
Well, I'm concerned by the degradation of good manners and decency for whoever is on a different line from you. I mean, I was attacked myself. The courts didn't exactly help on that one, but that notwithstanding, the liberty to protest is important, but not to threaten. And whatever else her views, if she was asked just straightforward questions, then it's up to her whether she answers them. If she doesn't want to answer them, then log that one and say she's avoiding you, and next time you have to vote, don't vote for her. But don't get involved in this, is what we're seeing in the pictures here. This becomes threatening, angry behaviour, and
we don't know. It's not very clear over who is responsible
well, that's
for
my
threatening
point.
and angry behaviour.
It shouldn't happen. I mean, listen, I don't agree with her on almost anything. I don't think. And I certainly don't agree with her if she's not being able to answer on trans issues, because they are vital for most of the people. We've seen so many children abused as a result of this experimentation that's taken place with trans drugs. So I'm very much against the continuing use of this, and to make it very clear, a definition of a woman is a biological adult female. It isn't anything else. And
See, it's not that complicated, is it? It's really simple. Sarah Doug-Smith, always great to talk to you. Conservative MP, former Conservative Party leader as well. 12:23 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Going to hear what Benedict Spence has to say about all of that, and we're going to get to your calls as well on Around This Is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:25 is the time. Benedict Spence still with me, listening to everything that Ian Douglas-Smith had to say. I have to say, I do always want him to be just sort of voice of absolute sort of common sense in a lot of these issues. What do you want to come back on?
I think it probably has to be the discussion about national security and energy policy as a result of that, because
it's all tied in.
It is, and the problem is, Julia, like, how many years have you and I had the same conversations over and over again? And
Sorry,
even
everyone.
Now, but this is the thing: nobody can say that nobody saw this coming. Nobody can say that they weren't warned, because so many people over time have picked up on this sort of stuff.
You can't have a strong economy, you can't have strong defences if you don't have cheap and plentiful energy.
The principal duty of the government is not welfare or the NHS or anything like that. It's security.
What?
It's security. And this is, what we're talking about right now, money that needs to be found for various different things to do with defence and border. It should be coming from the welfare budget. It should be coming from
the budget for asylum hotels.
It should absolutely be coming
for
these sorts of things. But this government and previous governments, to their shame, conservative governments, would not touch that with a barge pole. And again, that's why I say, I'm sorry, people will get upset at me. You get the country you deserve. Because why are they not touching it? Because voters get these handouts.
Because people get... this was Gordon Brown from Work Go There. Put everyone on the payroll. Everyone gets a tax credit. Everyone, here you go, have some money, have some money.
Yeah,
if you put everyone on the payroll, it's in everyone's interest to carry on doing it.
But then what is the point? If you can't build anything, if you can't defend yourself, you can't make anything. The key things, as I said at the top of the show, Keir Starmer has within his path, he's not going to do it, but he has the options for the reset. And that is reforming and upping spending on the military and on energy. Those two things... Massive winner. It doesn't need to get involved in the war. He's not going to do it.
You cannot have a strong economy without free and plentiful energy.
But he's not going to do it.
You can't have a successful defence.
He's not going to do it because he's not brave. Fundamentally, he's
but
a
also
weak
he doesn't
man.
Believe in anything. He's a mister on the one hand, on the other hand.
I actually don't necessarily agree with that. I think he believes in the primacy of international law, whatever that is. But on the practicalities of this, we've seen him and Rachel Reeves attempt to change things around welfare. They understand that these things don't work. The problem is his party.
The change was they were overturned. They were trying to cut
of course, it was
$5 billion from the increase in, which was more than that.
But they recognised that it was a stupid thing to do. He is tied. He is weak and he is tied to a party of idiots. And I'm sorry, that's the reality of the situation. Not that we can say the Tories ever did anything great, because their attitude, let's not forget, the last election was, oh, well, maybe we need a period in opposition to regroup and everything will be fine. Look where that got us.
Yeah. Well done, everybody.
It's great, isn't it?
Let's go straight to the calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. I'll have your say. A lot of you getting in touch on Iran, obviously. Again, this is good. This is the thing. It's not a foreign policy story. It's going to affect the price of everything you buy in the supermarket. Cost of everything. Going on a holiday, the cost of driving a car, heating your home. You name it, is going to affect the interest rate, the mortgage. It's going to affect the taxes we pay, because they're going to have to pay more on interest. These things, something that happens over there in a part of the world that many of us have never been to, is going to affect us. And this whole sort of, we shouldn't get involved, it's got nothing to do with us. I hate to tell you, everything has something to do with us.
One more thing that it's going to affect that we're not talking about yet, but it's coming: illegal migration. It's going to go up. It's going to go up.
Yes.
And has Keir Starmer found a way of a new command and control centre to stop the boats? No, he has not. Oddly enough.
I'm sorry, I assumed I was away from it. The gangs had been smashed.
The grown-ups said that they were going to do everything, and it turns out they've made it worse. And now more people are going to come. So there we got that to look forward to.
It's another happy Monday, folks.
Really is.
Bet you love tuning into this happy little chit-chat, don't you? Anyway.
We do it with a smile on our faces.
We do, as the country goes to pot. Anyway, we've got about a minute. No, let's go to calls. Mel is on the line in Plymouth. Hello, Mel.
Hello, Julia.
Hello.
Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you for calling. What do you want to say?
Well, I just wanted to say I was actually listening to all the analysis this morning, and it's totally wrong what people think in here, because at the moment, everybody says, oh, poor people, they're getting bombed and all that sort of nonsense. And I can assure you that with the Persians, they are very glad to get bombed rather than living.
I just need to know, you're originally from Iran yourself?
Yes.
Yeah.
I am.
How long have you been here?
50 years ago, I came here.
Right.
And I married an Englishman, and that is the time of Shah. And so, anyway, I'm just saying that things are totally different from what, people are actually living in Iran. Admittedly, they're living under this brutal regime. Yeah. And I mean, I can't even put a name on them. There is no name for them. And I can assure you that at the moment, everybody's talking about petrol going up and whatever. And it's always surge in the market when a war happens. But this is not going to be long. And people, they sort of say, oh, they don't know what Trump is talking. 1 minute he says this, 1 minute he says that. And it's all because Trump just doesn't want to give away. At the moment, although 40,000 of our youth, one generation, that they're gone by this regime.
Yeah, the massacred in the streets,
Truly, in a matter of 2 days. and they couldn't do worse to us. So people in the street, I mean, honestly, they're all waiting at home, just Trump and Netanyahu, to say, okay, now you can go in the street. And they're all waiting for that.
But that's going to, but you know, Trump and Netanyahu can't deliver that if you've still got the Islamic Revolutionary, Corps, IRGC is still on the streets. 650,000 highly trained, highly armed, and absolutely, totally down the line with whichever Ayatollah is in charge in terms of Islamist extremism. Unarmed 20-year-olds don't stand a chance against them.
Yes, but I understand that. But the plan is that 650,000 IRGC, they are against 90 million. Even if 90 million don't go out, it would be 50 million.
Yeah.
And I can assure you, I mean, the first time that they killed them, it was 1 million people they were out. And you can see with all the demonstrations globally that they are all in hundreds of thousands. And I was one of them, including myself. Right. But what I say, what they are trying to do, they are going to weaken this regime and suppressing arm that it kills people. So they're going to weaken on that. And then they say, well, okay, now that's what we have done. It's up to you now.
Yeah.
And then it would be people by millions. They would go in the streets and take over this regime. And people, they're so fed up with this regime. And I can assure you, Julia, they are not Muslim in Iran.
It's largely secular. Exactly. People compare it with Iraq all the time. It's a completely different country with a completely different population.
Absolutely different, because we are waiting for Reza Pahlavi, who is going to be going to do the time of transaction.
Well, you say that. Doesn't sound like anyone in any of the... It's got any say over it. I don't think the Israelis or the Americans are very keen on him coming in. I'm going to have to leave that. I've got to squeeze in another call, but I so appreciate your call. Thank you so much. That's Mel in Plymouth. She's Iranian, came here 50 years ago. Elliot is in Bushy. Hello, Elliot. What do you want to say?
Well, I think there's a big argument which isn't being discussed enough. If you listen to our ridiculous Foreign Secretary speaking to Lord Kansberg, all the reasons why we shouldn't do anything.
That was an excruciating interview yesterday.
Right. So here's the thing. We were attacked. Simple. Our sovereign territory on Cyprus, Akrotiri, was attacked.
Yep.
We are a member of NATO. An attack under Article 5 on one member is considered under Article 5 an attack on all, and all responds. That has been the NATO policy since the end of the Second World War. And if that awful, awful Prime Minister that we've got needed, heaven forbid, another international law, and the law people and the law profession I've spoken to in my career, my industry, says that should be invoked, and we should respond accordingly.
Interestingly,
and no one has.
It's just been pointed out, actually, that the NATO treaty, Article 5, and again, it doesn't require a response, it's just people should give support, but it's about attack against anyone in Europe or North America should be considered an attack against all, but overseas territories and distant bases, whether or not the military base in Cyprus would count as that, not often fall outside of the scope of that Article 5. So maybe that's not why it is. But again, even so, we're not going to have Keir Starmer invoking that, because that would involve getting off the fence and getting that big pole that's up his backside out of him.
Well, the only reason he won't... I think my point is, you may indeed be right, you may indeed be wrong. In my industry, in the law profession, the people I've spoken to say it should be adhered to, and we should respond. And the reason he isn't responding is, apart from all his international law excuses, is you've got about, I don't know how many people now in this country who are, dare I say it, because I'll be called racist, of the Islamic Iranian type environment, and they are the electorate that he wants to support. And by the way, if I may, very quickly, up the road from not far from where I live, it was in the news, a load of Iranians have been arrested for targeting a Jewish synagogue on, I believe, their Sabbath day yesterday.
Iranians?
Yes, Iranians. It was in the news everywhere. In Watford, there are also some in Harrow. This is a disgrace to this country. I am ashamed to be to be British.
I'm ashamed of any attack on anyone for their religion, full stop.
Well,
again,
there you
my
go.
issue, my issues with Islamism, the terrorist threat, the extremism, not with, certainly not with ordinary Muslims going about their daily lives like the rest of us. I'm going to leave it there. Elliot, thank you very much. Covered a lot of ground, those two calls, Elliot and Bushy. Let's go to a quick break. Up next, we are going to be talking to the brilliant Andrew Fox, former major in the Parachute Regiment, of course, with the Henry Jackson Society now, regular on the show, to talk about what he makes of it all. That's up next. Stay tuned. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon. Welcome to the show. 12:38 is the time. Let's go to my next guest, Andrew Fox. He's a former major in the Parachute Regiment, now an senior associate fellow at the Henry Jackson Society, and joins us to talk about, well, what the heck is going on in the Middle East. A very good afternoon to you, Andrew.
Hi, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. Just first of all, talk about this phone call that we've seen, we know that took place for about 20 minutes yesterday between Keir Starmer and Donald Trump after a week in which, well, Donald Trump has been publicly berating and mocking our Prime Minister for not being there, basically, you know, at the beginning and being no Winston Churchill. Do you think that Starmer's dithering and Starmer's sort of reliance on, no doubt, you know, Lord Hermer and others on absurd notions of international law, do you think that has damaged our position, not just with America, but across the globe?
I mean, yes and no. I think the special relationship was on life support long before this, after a year of Trump too. You can't go around threatening your allies, mocking them, putting tariffs on them, abusing their war debt, and generally behaving in the way that America has, and expect people to just go along with anything you say. So I think the British perspective is very strong, and I think what we've got is
you're very much in support of Keir Starmer saying, nope, this is like Diego Garcia, nope, this is for you.
Yeah, I think Starmer has done the most magnificently Starmer thing ever, which is make the right decision for completely the wrong reason and then miscommunicate the entire thing. So he's taken a position that could have been really strong, and he's made an absolute hash of it, would be my take.
That's very interesting. Yeah, somehow he's bumbled into the right decision. Now, I'm rather with the Tony Blair view that, you know, this is our biggest ally. Iran is a threat not just to Israel, another big ally, but also to its, as we've seen very clearly, its Middle Eastern neighbours, those who've just gone, well, those who tried to play that they're a neutral like Qatar, well, they've not been neutral at all. Oops, how's that worked out for you, Qatar? But they have been a threat to us. We know there are some 20 terrorist attacks that have been foiled by our security forces in recent years by Iran. I mean, we should have been joining in an attack on Iran, shouldn't we?
Well, I'd turn it around. I'd say, look, what can we actually add compared to two US carrier groups and the fairly mighty Israeli Air Force? Very little is the answer to that. And of course, we have Russia to worry about. As the Americans have been insisting on for the last 12 months, we have to take responsibility for our own security. And so we have. And that means we have other focuses other than the Middle East now, unfortunately. And the final point I would make on top of that is, if we're going to do something at all, it should be on the diplomatic scale. We should be banning the IRGC.
Yeah.
We should be, offering statements of support. There's plenty we can do on the sort of softer side of things that makes us an important sort of ally in this, but doesn't commit us militarily, because Russia is a far bigger security threat to us, and that has to be our focus.
And I suppose that's a very point. If America says, hey, Europe, that's your problem, well then, okay, well, fine, but you can deal with the Middle East. What do you make of how this is exposed? Well, let's face it, people like you have been saying for a very long time that our military capability is just massively undermined in recent years. And again, it's not just by this government, it's previous governments. This goes way back, 20 years, where we can send an aircraft carrier, but not yet. We can send a frigate, but it'll take 5 days. And if we do send an aircraft carrier, it's going to have to be escorted by a French gunship to keep it safe. I mean, this has been a bit of a humiliation, hasn't it?
I think if I'm a British taxpayer, and of course I am, but with my military head off, I'm livid about where my money is going. Yeah. We have the 5th biggest military budget in the world, vastly bigger than Israel's, and yet we're not able to get our force projected around the world. We're not able to put together a coherent response. Now, I'm relaxed about the French escort because we're designed to work with other countries. That's not by accident, that's by design, so that's fine. But how on earth can we spend the 5th most of any country in the world, and yet we don't have the missile defences we need? We don't have sufficient ships that can sail at a moment's notice. We don't have a deployable army division that can go out at any strength for any duration of time. This is catastrophic mismanagement by the Ministry of Defence and the 3 separate forces. And people should rightly be angry about where their tax money is going on defence.
Can I ask you also, I've got to ask this, it's just extraordinary revelation yesterday that right in the middle of this, we're looking, Cyprus base being attacked and HMS Dragon stuck in port. All serving soldiers were asked last Thursday, while this military campaign was already underway, whether they thought that men should be allowed to use makeup and wear their hair long as women are allowed to do. They were surveyed on woke gender-free changes, which could see men wearing makeup, long hair extensions. They could paint their nails, wear earrings, and etc. The same way that women are allowed to do so. And it's all about obviously being more inclusive and making sure that trans and non-binary members of the military felt included. What do you make of that?
I mean, I'd have loved to grow my hair long, but nature took care of that problem for me, unfortunately. Look, this just speaks, I think, to the fundamental unseriousness of the MOD. I've just spoken about how they're misspending money left, right, and centre. This just shows an organisation that fully fails to understand the nature of the threat we're facing and the direction the world is going now in 2026. It's more unstable, it's more dangerous. And the fact that our MOD is fannying around with this nonsense is absolutely indicative of an organisation that's not taking things seriously and is focused on all the wrong things.
Indeed. I like fannying around is a phrase we do not hear often enough. Although it's probably transphobic to say that, but there we are. What do you make of the election by an 80-person group of clerics? I'm going to go 80-man. I'm going out on a limb here. The new Ayatollah. We had an Ayatollah Khamenei who was, I think, thrilled to say, killed in early Israeli and American airstrikes. We then had an interim leader. He was a goner too. Now the Ayatollah Khamenei's son, Mojtaba Khamenei, has been appointed the new supreme leader. Donald Trump has already said, nah, not happy with him, he's not going to do. How long do you give him? How long do you think he's going to last?
Well, the president has survived a good amount of time. President Pezeshkian's still going, so he's obviously taken to a bunker and is hunkered down. It all depends on the lessons of the last week and whether they can learn those or not. There is rumours that the new Ayatollah was already injured in the first round of airstrikes, so we actually don't know his condition.
We haven't seen him yet, as he's not been on film
yet. Exactly that. So this is one of the big problems with this war. There's nothing coming out. There's no information other than you've either got US or Israeli drone footage or you've got regime propaganda. It's very, very hard to work out what's actually happening in this war. And by the same token, the Iranians obviously aren't giving out information on where their new leader is. So it's very hard to say. The Americans and Israelis will be after him. If I were him, I would be deep underground.
Absolutely. Just finally, talking about what stuff's going on back here, and it's something I know you've talked an awful lot about in the past, including on my show. We've got a strategy that is going to be published later today. Basically, it's about looking at cohesion in communities in this country. It's going to be called Protecting What Matters. And it's, I mean, pretty much every government has produced one of these strategies way back. Not sure any of them have achieved anything, but they're going to include the appointment of an anti-Muslim hostility czar. And the idea is they want to challenge extremism. It does point out that Islamist extremism is the biggest threat to community cohesion, but it also criticises right-wing groups for using the Union flag and the cross of St George as tools of hate. And interestingly, it does say that communities have been broken down by mass immigration, but calls on everybody basically saying that there should be, there's a responsibility both ways. It's a two-way street. Respect for different cultures from people here, but also newcomers have a responsibility to engage with and embrace with what it means to be British. Do you have any expectation or hope that either this new anti-Muslim hate czar or this new cohesion strategy, which I think has only got a few million quid attached to it for the entire country, is going to achieve anything?
Well, look, it's noise in the right direction, and I suppose we can take some solace in that. I think we need to look to Denmark for this. They've certainly taken huge strides forward in improving the nature of cohesion. So they've prevented too many people from foreign countries settling in one particular area and preventing that balkanization. They're placing an emphasis on Danish as the language that needs to be used. Like, there is an astonishing amount of money in this country that our state spends on translation.
Yeah.
No translator services because people simply cannot function in English.
Hilariously, we spent money on translation services for Afghan translators coming from the war. You got to wonder. You got to wonder about that, right?
Yeah, and the system is open to gaming quite clearly. But look, there's concrete measures we can take. Whether this government actually will put the money behind it and the effort behind it remains to be seen. But, you know, I suppose making the right noise is at least a start. And then every journey begins with a start.
Seen it all before, unfortunately. Forgive me for being a bit more cynical. Andrew Fox, always so good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Benedict Spence, just some breaking news here. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is going to update MPs in the House of Commons this afternoon about the situation in the Middle East. And this, of course, amid the spike in the cost of oil. Bearing in mind, we had her spring statement last week, rather pointlessly, again, after we'd already seen these attacks in Iran, which of course all instantly had an impact on oil and other energy prices, and even the OBR, you know, doing their predictions, basically just, I think it was one line mentioning, oh yeah, in the small matter of a war in Iran. There's going to have a massive impact. There's no doubt at all that this is going to be a huge issue for this government and for the British people.
Massively, and partly I think that is one of the key reasons why Starmer has been so reticent to sort of offer any major encouragement to the US, let alone get involved, because he does not want to be tarred. As much as people will say,
that's part of your fault.
As much as people will say, look, you did not prepare us for this, at the very least he'll be able to say, look, but I didn't actually want this, I didn't drag us into it, so you can't blame it for me. I don't think it's going to work.
No, I don't think that's going to work.
But I think that is genuinely one of the attitudes that he's taking.
Can Starmer go down any further in the polls?
We're going to find out.
I mean, I'm fascinated.
It's genuinely...
With the surge in the Greens that we've seen, second in the polls.
I suppose it depends. How much more support will he get for not taking us into the war, juxtaposed with how quickly do we feel the pain? Yeah. That's how you're going to find out. But I mean, listen, I already thought rather he was a goner. I think it's just a question of waiting until the party realises that he is as well.
Don't ever say that politics is boring, folks. It isn't. 12:49 is the time. Up next, going to be talking to the former Brexiteer businessman, Lance Foreman, former MEP and businessman. He's still a businessman, Lance Foreman, about, the latest Brexit betrayal. Oh, yeah, it's always going to be another one when Keir Starmer's in charge. That's up next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. Just to let you know that we just had a little statement from the Prime Minister's official spokesman, and they've steered away from suggestions that a British aircraft carrier, this is the HMS Prince of Wales we mentioned earlier, is being ready to deploy to the Mediterranean amid the war with Iran. And the spokesman said that we've deployed significant offensive capabilities to protect British people and our allies in the region. This is the Middle East, obviously, and that includes Typhoons, F-35 jets, air defence systems, and an extra 400 personnel to Cyprus. But just point out that this has been bolstering our military presence in the Middle East since January, so we don't know how much of that has happened in the last week or so. Anyway, let's turn our attention to something else which is never far from the agenda with this government, bearing in mind the Prime Minister is a committed Remoaner, not a Remainer. He spent 3 years from 2016 trying to stop Brexit from happening, to undermine it when, of course, he was shadow Brexit Secretary under Corbyn's leadership. And what a surprise, as soon as he got into office, despite everything they said about, honouring Brexit, they've been trying for this EU reset, which is basically trying to undermine our independence. And the ministers have admitted that the Starmer's reset with the European Union is going to hammer thousands of businesses with costly Brussels red tape, even if they don't trade with the bloc. Wasn't that part of the point of coming out? Well, let's talk about that with Lance Foreman. He's a former Brexiteer MEP and a businessman and joins us now. Good afternoon to you, Lance.
Good afternoon to you, Julia.
Lovely to speak to you. So, look, we always knew what he really thought. He didn't, he didn't really hide it. But what this Brexit reset, this EU reset, we're told we have to have good relations with our closest trading neighbours. What's not to like about that, Lance?
Well, you don't need to face exactly the same rules as them to have good relations. You can have good relations with them anyway. I mean, what he's doing is, it's anti-democratic. Obviously, nobody's voted for this. It's bad for business. Business is not going to benefit from this one iota. And actually, probably more important than anything, it's completely misguided as to why business in the UK is suffering. It's not because we're not in the EU. Business is suffering because we've got far too much red tape and taxes are way too high. Yeah. People often ask me, how I feel about Brexit, having been so involved in the campaign, and do I think it's been a success? The way I always characterise it is I say, well, what we did was we unlocked the door, but we never left the room.
Exactly. That's a great way of putting it.
And I think what Keir Starmer is doing now is, rather than letting us leave the room, he's locking the door again.
Yeah. I was just away for the last week. Had some Americans, saying like, but Brexit was a terrible idea. I said, oh, really? You're going to do a deal in America, are you, to have Mexico and Canada tell you what your laws are, who can live in your country and your energy policy? I mean, are you insane? You wouldn't agree to that. Why would we? But this is the thing. There's no doubt at all the Labour Party under Keir Starmer is absolutely intent on taking us back into the EU. Do you think that'll ever happen?
Well, they're going to do their damnedest. I mean, and they'll probably U-turn on it at the last minute. That's what they tend to do with all of their decisions. But the fact of the matter is, they just don't, there's nobody in the shadow cabinet that has been in private business. They have no
You mean the cabinet?
In the cabinet, sorry, the cabinet. There's nobody in the cabinet that's been in private business, that's been in commerce, that actually understands the impacts of the decisions they make. And why would we want to join the EU? It's not as though the EU is a thriving economy that we want to be part of. It's probably the worst economy in the world. In fact, if you look at the German economy, which was always the strongest in Europe, since the date of the referendum to now, has even performed worse than the awful British economy. Yeah. So, we should be looking for business opportunities in parts of the world that are growing, not parts that are shrinking.
Well, indeed, I mean, it is absolutely fascinating. You say such lack of business experience, the fact that the government still thinks it's Brexit that's an issue, as opposed to, putting up the cost of hiring people and putting up other taxes, and not understanding that would have a direct impact. In terms of this reset, I mean, part of the issue is, look, if you sell to any country, if we sell to America, you sell to Taiwan, wherever you sell to, you have to obey the laws of that country in terms of the product specifications and rules, don't you? But there's no reason why most people who are producing a good that's being sold in Britain or sold elsewhere, why they have to comply with EU regulation. And that is what the EU requires. And what Starmer's going to basically reset, which everything we do will have to comply with EU regulations, whether you're selling it to the EU or not.
Look, that's absolutely right. And you know, what we should be looking for and what we should have been looking for in terms of our deal with the EU was what's called mutual recognition, where we recognise their standards, they recognise ours.
Broadly similar.
You know, everybody's happy, but what they want is harmonisation, where you have to have exactly the same standards. And how mad is that? For 90% of businesses in the UK don't even trade with the EU. Why should they have to follow EU rules? You know, when French tourists come to the UK, do they say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't eat in your restaurant because your restaurant doesn't follow French rules and he follows British rules"? The whole thing is nonsense. It's a protectionist racket. And that's why we left. That's why we had the biggest Democratic vote we've ever had and decided to leave. You know, there's no Democratic vote to bring us back in again.
No. And, even if there was, they'd have to have an election with a manifesto saying we're going to have a referendum. They hold that referendum. We'll be back there at the barricades, I'm sure, Lance, you and me. And I can tell you right now, British people ain't voting to go back in. My only worry is they're going to take us back in by hook or by crook without even telling us. But that's because they're not Democrats, as you say. Lance Foreman, former MEP, businessman, thank you very much. Very good smoked salmon, by the way. Benedict Spence, what do you make of that?
Well, yes, it's a reflection of the broader attitudes in British politics. You know, you can't look at our attitude, the politicians' attitude, rather, to the European Union and separate it out from their attitude towards energy or defence or anything else. They simply aren't, as you say, Democrats, but they also don't learn. They don't shift.